Okay, ready? We will start
Ready.
the thing.
Buzu, Kaitna Dijnakas, Biktagong, Nishnabek, and Indoji. Hello, everybody. My name is Kate. My family comes from Pick River First Nations. I am an RN in the Mindamoyne Clinic at Onwa, and I will be facilitating the Women's Health Talk today. Welcome back to everyone who has joined us before for the Indigenous Women's Health Talk, and a warm welcome to those that are new here. Together today, we are gathered to learn about traditional medicines and how we can build our bundles. To lead us in this knowledge, we have our Anishinaabe doctor, Dr. Alexa Lesperance. She walks her path in a good way and leads a two-eyed seeing approach to healthcare. We are very lucky to have her teach us today on this healing
I'm not quite sure how
and
talking with
culturally grounded topic. We are also very fortunate today to have our cultural program manager and knowledge keeper, Audrey DeRoy. At Onwa, we are so lucky to learn and work beside Audrey. She is a wealth of traditional knowledge and ensures that all the work that she does is grounded in cultural knowledge and kindness. I'm confident that between these two, the teachings that we will get will be rooted in traditional teachings, warmth, and will help us to build our bundles. A little breakdown of how this talk is going to go. First, I am going to start us off with a smudge. Then I'll go over some housekeeping items, and then I will do the mala bracelet activity with you. And after that, we will let Dr. Alexa and Audrey start their teachings. So before we begin, and in order to start things off in a good way, I'm going to start us off with a smudge. So asking the creator to send this sacred smudge to wherever you are tuning in from. Yesterday was National Truth and Reconciliation Day. So I'm asking the creator to be with all of those who are watching today, as well as your family and loved ones, and really all of our relations. I want to take a moment just to calm our hearts and quiet our minds, and open our ears to listen to these lessons and to build our bundles in a good way. And for those that are listening with a heavy heart or clouded mind, I ask the Creator to offer you gentleness while you listen to these teachings today. So I'm going to let that smudge burn beside me so that it's not right in front of my face. So just a few housekeeping items for those who are joining us for the first time, and then just a reminder for those of you who have joined us before. In order to create a safe learning environment for everybody, you will not be able to turn on your mics or cameras for others to see. You can turn on your cameras though for Dr. Alexa to see you, but the other viewers that are tuning in will not be able to see each other. For this talk and especially while we're doing the activity, if you do need assistance from me, you can turn on your camera so I can see where you're at. And if you have any questions or comments, you can type them in the chat. Only our moderators will be able to see that, but they will pass all the messages on to myself as well as Dr. Alexa to answer. We will have a 10-minute break around the midway point. Depending on when we finish up the activity, we might take a short break before Dr. Alexa and Audrey begin, but we'll see where we're at. And then once again, the survey link will be provided throughout this talk, and we very much appreciate your feedback as it really does help us plan these talks. Everybody that fills out the survey will be entered in for a draw prize, and this month the prize is a wellness bundle. And also you don't need to fill out the survey immediately. It will be open for 2 days post this talk. So moving on to the Mala bracelet activity. The people that were a part of the first 100 to register will have received a kit in the mail with a Mala bracelet items as well as an instruction page. And if you were not a part of the first 100 to register, you would have received an email with the instruction page as well as a supply list for you to purchase the required supplies to be able to follow along. If you are listening in and you haven't received either, our talks will be posted on YouTube where you could listen back to hear the instructions if you do want to make a Mala bracelet. So going into the Mala bracelet activity, so what exactly is a Mala bracelet? They've been used in many spiritual traditions, and the beads on the bracelet are seen to have many powerful benefits for not just the body, but as well as the mind and spirit. They've been used for meditation practices, but also as decoration or jewelry. And these bracelets can hold special significance for the person that is wearing it based on the stones that you choose and the energy that is put into these bracelets while making it. So we will go over the meaning of the colors of the beads, and I did try to put a variation in the kits that I had sent out. So choose based on what is included in your kits that you received in the mail, as well as which speak to you. So the various colors are, there should be some wooden mala beads, and what is significant to these is that they provide stability and grounds mentally, physically, and spiritually. They can shield against negative energies. The purple beads they balance high energy, they eliminate chaos and support wisdom. The orange beads represent vitality, ambition, creativity, and fun, and they have connections with your inner child. The green beads are a stone that brings good luck and prosperity. Pink beads represent love, compassion, and connection. The white beads signifies purity and peace and are associated with connection to the spirit world. The blue beads are associated with peace, calm, and relaxation, And then you will also see in your kits lava stone beads. And these are seen as grounding stones that strengthen one's connection to Mother Earth, and they focus on balance. And the lava stones are also important if you did want to have essential oils on your beads, which we'll get into later once we make them. But at the end, once your bracelet is complete, you can add essential oils to the lava stone beads. They will absorb the oil, and then you'll be able to smell them throughout the day. So if you do want that, then it would be a good idea to include some lava stone beads to your bracelet. So I did complete a bracelet, which I will show you once I find it. Should be in here. I should have got it out beforehand, but and I also should have provided a disclaimer that I am feeling a little bit under the weather. So if I am sniffling or coughing, I apologize for that. Okay. So this is my completed bracelet. I will kind of show you what it looks like. You can see the different color beads, as well as I had put some wooden ones on there, and then also some lava beads. Looks like that on. It's quite pretty. And I had added sage essential oil to my lava beads once I was completed it. I do believe that that is the essential oil that will be provided in your kit in a little tube like this. So beginning with making the bracelets, in your kit, you will see some stretchy cord. You'll see some beads, the various kinds that I had just gone over, the essential oil, as well as the adhesive glue. And so to start off, what you're going to want to do is pre-stretch this cord. It is pretty strong, so don't be concerned about it breaking. But you do want to pre-stretch it, because if you don't, then it will stretch out on your wrist. And then looking at the beads that are provided in your kit, you can pick ones that do speak to you. The kits that we had mailed out had this instruction sheet in them, so you can go back and look at the different colors and choose from that. And then it is important that while you're making your bracelet, that you are making it with good intention and positive energy. So you can take out your beads and then line them up. to be about 7 inches, which is the standard size. I did cut these strings a little bit longer than that just to give us some wiggle room and ability to tie it at the end. So just take out your beads and line them up in whatever order you wish for them to be on your bracelet, and whichever colors you that speak to you. I will give you a few minutes to do that.
Okay, when do you like tie one end first? Like make
So
a knot?
the way that I had done it was I had like all my beads on here, held it gently so they didn't like fall off. And then I tied it like this. Like I didn't tie one end, I just tied the two ends together. It is kind of tricky, like you have to be careful and maybe do it above the counter just so that in case they do fall off. I just found that the easiest because this string is a little tricky to actually tie. It tends to like slip off. So you will have to make like 2 or 3 knots. And you will also have to tie it really tight. Like I said, the string is pretty forgiving, so should be able to tie it pretty tight. Did you get it okay?
Yep, slowly adding the beads.
Oh, okay. Because it might not seem super secure once you just knot it, but then we have to add glue, which is kind of the key part to making sure that it doesn't come undone. I'm just adding the beads to my string and then I can show you how I tied it. Okay, so I got my beads on my string. Both ends are not tied. Like I didn't tie a knot. So what I'm gonna do is just tie a knot like this, nice and tight, and then do like probably two more knots, and just keep tying it really tight. Because I find that this cord, while it's very convenient that it's stretchy, so you can like take your bracelet on and off, it's really a pain to tie because it's slippery. So once you get like 3 knots, I'd say you should be good. So that's kind of like, it's hard to see, but that's what the end of mine looks like with the knot there. And then what you're gonna do is you're gonna take this glue that was in the kit, and it does need to be punctured to be able to use. So you just take the cap off and then you puncture the end with the one end of the cap that has the spike on it. And this glue will make sure that that knot doesn't slip off. And to be honest, this part is hard to be super like clean and not make it look messy. So what I did when I was making these in the office was I just used a piece of Kleenex and like wiped it off a little bit and more around where the knot is so that it's really secure. Right now I'm just using a matchstick, but if you have Kleenex near you, that works too. And then I just kind of let the glue dry. It doesn't take super long, but try not to like try to put the bracelet on until the glue is dry, because just to keep that knot in place and tight where it is.
Kate, do you have a top-down camera? Are you able to switch the view so we can like kind of look from the top down? Is there a way to do that?
Yeah, I can try to take my camera down. It's gonna be a little.
Oh, perfect. Yeah, like that. Like that's. Oh, you have purple. Wait, what?
Yeah, that's like all I had in my kit, so I didn't really have much of a choice. This is my previous one though, the one that I had completed
Ooh,
prior to today.
great. And so sorry. Do the E600 again. So you just because isn't this glue quite like strong?
Yes.
Don't get it on your fingers.
Well, try not to. I'm working over top this like fabric bag that it came in, as well as a Kleenex, just to make sure that I'm not getting it all over my station.
Okay.
How's yours going?
I'm like, oh, that's fancy. I think it's good.
Perfect.
I just haven't done the glue part yet. Like I'm just gonna. It was hard to tie these knots. Yeah, so I'm gonna do that one sec.
I know it is really hard to tie knots with this cord, so the glue is definitely what holds it together. And then also for everybody, if you're making this alongside us, like I said, the cord that I had supplied in the kits is longer than like the standard bracelet size, so you will have pieces at the end that just need to be snipped off once your glue is dry. So don't worry if you do have these pieces hanging over, we'll just cut them off. How's it going?
I have it glued. I don't know that I have a good enough amount of glue, and it's kind of like all over the string. So,
Yeah,
but
that's
that's
okay.
okay.
You'll cut that string off,
Okay.
and then you
How
don't
long
need
is it to dry, do you think?
Well, mine's almost dry. It doesn't take very long, like maybe 2 minutes.
So I should stop trying to touch it and like move it around. I'm like, I'm ready. Okay, never mind.
Let it rest.
Okay.
I really like how you did yours.
Thank you. Yeah, I did like the little like can you even see that? Like,
Yeah,
mhm.
I like how you have them grouped together.
Thank you. Yeah, I think this is good.
I did mine all mismatched.
I love that. That seems very you.
Yeah. Yeah, yeah, you're definitely more of a type A. Type
Thanks,
B.
Kate.
Not in a negative way. The world needs type A's.
Perfect.
Things are all lined up nicely.
Yeah.
I love it.
I like it. That's good.
Great
Here's little
job.
daisies that I had. I don't know if you had little metal parts, but I had
Oh,
little
those are
daisies.
so cute.
Oh.
I love it.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Okay. I think it's good though now. Maybe. Okay.
Yeah, and then just let that glue dry, and then we'll cut the ends off once it's a little more dry.
Isn't this kind of like super glue? Like,
Yeah, yeah, but it's a little more, like it has, like you need more of it than super glue. Super glue is very much like one little dot,
okay.
whereas this, I think you can spread it easier. It's a little thicker.
Yeah.
Looks great.
I just wonder, like, is it going to affect the ability to stretch because it's glued? Do you know what I mean? Like,
No, it'll be okay.
okay.
Because the rest of the bracelet is still stretchy cord.
Right, right. Okay, okay. Duh. Yes. I'm gonna go find some scissors. 1 second. Okay. I think this is good. It's dry. Like, I guess I should leave some. Hey.
Yeah, I would leave a little bit.
Okay.
Perfect. I mean, you can, like, you can let it dry even a little more and then snip those ends a little shorter if you don't want them sticking out.
Okay. Is this too long?
No, it's definitely personal preference.
I'm like already trying to put it on. I'm like, put it on. Okay.
Gets glue all over your arm.
I know. I'm scared. That seems good.
Oh, I
Aw,
love it. It looks so nice on you.
thank you. I really think this is really pretty.
It's very pretty.
Okay.
And then, um, So once you snip the ends off of your bracelet, once the glue is dry, then you can take the essential oils and apply them to the lava beads.
These ones, these lava beads.
Yeah.
Okay. Okay.
Did you guys get essential oil?
I didn't, but I think everyone's kit at home did.
Yes.
So is the essential oil, if you put it on there, is it going to get oil everywhere, or does it just like absorb in there, or?
Well, it depends on the bottle that you're using. I had a bigger bottle that I was using in the office, and it did get everywhere. It
Okay.
just kind of pours out, which I didn't realize. I
Mhm.
think these ones that were in the kits are a little gentler, but what I did was I put essential oils on it on top of a Kleenex. I
Okay.
didn't have the bracelet on yet. I left it for, let's say, a couple minutes just to absorb into the lava beads, and then I put it on,
Nice.
just so I didn't get it all over myself.
Mm-hmm.
So I can show what that looks like.
Oh, okay. You're gonna show yours with your
So this is the essential oils that everybody got. And I'm just dabbing it onto the lava beads. This one is definitely a lot gentler than the bottle I was using in the clinic. It's not rushing out like some bottles do. Just maybe do it this way when you do it for the first time, just so you don't get it all over yourself. So then these lava beads have essential oils on them. I'm just gonna let it sit for a few minutes, couple minutes, before I put it on, just so that, because I don't want to get essential oil all over myself. But yeah, it's really a preference. Once you get used to the scent, and if you like it, feel free to add dabs to your lava beads while it's on you. Obviously not in excessive quantity.
Okay,
And
can you read out what the things mean again? I just like, because now that I have my bracelet done, I'm like, wait, what are the colors again?
yeah, for sure.
Okay.
So the wooden mala beads they provide stability, and they ground you mentally, physically, and spiritually. They shield against negative energies. The purple beads,
Sorry, purple being like these ones or the ones you have? Or do these look purple or
they look kind of purple.
I don't know if that's, or is it
Dark.
brown? Okay, sorry. So the wooden ones, sorry, say again, the wooden ones.
The wooden ones provide stability.
Okay.
They ground you mentally, physically, and spiritually.
Okay.
And they shield against negative energies.
Okay.
The
What do the ones? Okay.
purple ones balance high energy, eliminate chaos, and support wisdom.
Damn, I really should have added more. I should have added more purple to this. Dang it. Okay, continue.
And then you have white. So
Yeah.
white signifies purity and peace, and it's associated with connection to the spiritual world.
Hmm.
The lava beads are a grounding stone and strengthen one's connection to Mother Earth,
Mhm.
and they focus on balance. They're also what you can put the essential oils on.
Mhm.
Yeah.
What about pink? I have like one random pink one right here.
Pink represents love, compassion, and connection.
Hmm.
Yeah.
Okay. Okay, that's beautiful. Thank you so much for sharing that.
Yeah, of course. And then So the essential oils are a really great way for one to carry traditional medicines with them
Mhm.
wherever they are. And it can also act as an alternative way of smudging in certain spaces where smudging may not be available.
Right.
So,
Mm.
like I said, the oils that were in the kits are sage essential oil.
Mhm.
So it is a really nice way to have your medicines with you and on your person wherever you are.
Beautiful. Thank you so much, Shimi Gwetch.
Of course. So I made mine. It's all done. There it is.
Nice.
And yeah, I think that is that. That's pretty much it for the Mala bracelets. They're not super complex or, you know, really tricky to make, but as long as you put that good energy into the beads that you put on your bracelet, yeah, it's a good thing to carry around with you. So
I just don't know. Did anyone have any questions, like on the chat about them? We changed the view, so that was good. Okay. Well, Audrey's going to be joining us at 3, so maybe let's just take like a 10-minute break, so people can like get up, stretch, get some water, please and thank you. And then we'll get started when Audrey joins us in about 10 minutes. We'll be back at 3 Eastern Standard Time.
sounds good.
Okay. See you soon.
I believe that we got the lava beads from Jangles.
Oh, okay. The lava
It-
beads. Where we got our lava beads. It's from Jingles, which is in a local store in Thunder Bay. Yeah, so to clarify, so thanks for the question. We have a question about where we got the lava beads. And so the answer to that is Jangles, Jangles. So it's a local bead shop that's located here in Thunder Bay. So if you're here in the area and would like some, that's a good place to get them. Hi, bonjour, bonjour.
Watch. Okay, what's going on?
Okay, I think I can hear you. Hi, Audrey.
Hey, bonjour, how are you?
I'm good.
Hey.
You're like, where are you?
We're in here, we're in.
I'm
Oh,
tired. Yeah,
it's like everything's so rushy
I
all
know.
the time, eh?
Okay, let's do it October 1st. I'm like,
Okay, here
ah.
we go.
Awesome.
Light some medicine, straighten things out.
Yeah. Awesome. Okay,
Oh,
so it sounds like we're probably gonna get started then. So
okay,
we started the live stream.
okay.
I'm so happy you're here to do this talk with me. I was thinking, so today's talk for Kate already introduced the topic, but for traditional medicines, I
Mhm.
think we'll start maybe Audrey by you and I introducing ourselves. I think a
Okay,
lot of people know who you are, but I can introduce myself first. So
okay.
we did an opening. Kate did an opening prayer and an opening smudge for us already.
Nice. Okay,
We did
so it's
the
already been done. I'm smudging myself
yeah.
right
You're
now
like
just to
smudge
get me. Woo,
quick.
okay, good. I'm all done.
And
I'm
then
ready to go.
we made the mala bracelets, which were really beautiful.
Oh, beautiful.
I know.
Wow, that's
Um,
awesome.
yeah. And so, yeah. So, Buju, Masabe Kwe, Indishnakas, Makwando Dam, Bishnabek Zagi, Nishnabek, and Donji, Nochmingwaning, Donji, Nishnabek Kwe, and Dao. So, my name is Alexa. I'm from the Bear Clan. I'm originally from Rocky Bay First Nation. And then eventually we switched our bands to Whitefish Bay. So, I'm a status member of Whitefish Bay in the Treaty 3 area. I am an Anishinaabe family doctor. I'm in my actually, this might be my fourth year of practice now. A third or fourth year of practice, which is wild to think. And I originally graduated from the Northern Ontario School of Medicine, which is actually where I met Audrey because she was our elder and knowledge keeper at our program, which really helped me survive medical school. So I'm just so honored that you're like doing this with me. I'm like, you were there with me in medical school. Um, so it's just a really good feeling. So I went to medical school. I did my residency training in family medicine at the University of British Columbia. They have an Indigenous family medicine program. So all my preceptors were pretty much Indigenous. Like we had elders that were associated with the program, and it was just like we had cultural, like time dedicated out of our schedule every 3 months. So it was just a really, really great program. I, being from the Bear Clan, my relation to traditional medicine um, is mostly in regards to that. So I think like sometimes Bear Clan people are associated with knowing about medicines, and I really don't know a lot, and I have a lot of disclosures about like how much I don't know. Like I have a slide fully dedicated to that because I feel a bit like an imposter doing this talk because I don't know a whole lot, but I am a physician, so I too try and see things from Western ways, which is what I learned, and then traditional ways, which is how I grew up. So they're very almost polar opposite. So it's really hard to like keep both of those things in mind when you're kind of trained to like not think of those things as valid or appropriate. So I had to do a lot of like, no, I want to talk about traditional medicine, and I started. My papa is a traditional medicine person, and so were lots of our ancestors. But I did a traditional medicine camp with Kathy Bird, who's from Peguis, and she did a 4 year traditional medicine camp. And I actually started that in my third year of medical school. So I remember coming from my pediatric rotation at the Thunder Bay Regional and then just going with my mentors, Chuck and Shannon, who are two native docs here in Thunder Bay, and then just driving me, okay, get in the car, let's go. And then just, yeah, going and learning. And it was a 4 year process. And I know that in the ways that I was taught, like I had to fast, I had to like be on the land. Like it wasn't just like, okay, now let's go out and pick. Like I feel like I had to do a lot of like talking and like with the plant medicines and land medicines. And yeah, so I feel like what I know is very little, which is why I'm glad you're here, Audrey. And so yeah, that's me. Yeah, maybe just introduce yourself.
Bonjour. Bonjour, Gakna. Greetings to everyone. Always when I come onto a virtual realm like this, I always see it as like a virtual lodge. And so I welcome everyone. And I heard that you've already used your hands, right, to do that process of healing. And it's so powerful. Uh, Nijimigwanek Nindigo, Wajash Nendo Dem, Anizada Kinindoji, Audrey Dior and Indigenous Cause. I come from my First Nations is a place of poplars. The French call it Lac de Molac, and it's west of here from Thunder Bay, about an hour and a half, and it's just past Upsala. Like we have two territorial areas. Actually, it's before Upsala, coming like going west, and then if you're coming east, it's just past Upsala. So we have a land base in there, but we've been dispersed because we've been flooded out. And so a lot of our people like just went in all four directions. And so we resided in a little town called Kashabawi. And Kashabawi, what it translates into is like, because we've got this Kashabawi River, and there's like this mist that rises above in the early morning. You could see the breath of life, eh? So Kashabawi, that's what it interprets. It's like this fog that lifts up off the water. And so I grew up there after we were displaced. Like my mother and her family were uh they moved to Kashabawi. And it's just close to Lac de Mille Lacs still. But a lot of our people went like Thunder Bay, Kenora, Rainy River. They went all the way to British Columbia, a lot of our people from Lac de Mille Lacs. So we've been dispersed pretty much all over the place. And now we're repatriating, we're coming back to our land base. So there's been a lot of work being done there, and it's been so powerful to reconnect to the land. I remember traveling back from British Columbia, and I had a dream that I had to go and set up a sweat lodge and go and pray and feed our ancestors. And I did not know this, but my nephew, my brother's son, he had a similar dream, and he was coming home too to do the same thing. And we shared our dream. And I remember like I could see it vividly where the sweat
Wow.
lodge was going to be. And we drove down this sort of like a clay highway through the bush at Mosier Lake. And I came to this place and I was like, this is it. This is what I saw in my dream. And right on the right hand side was all these big, tall white willow, which is our tobacco, right? And then on this it was like a little like peninsula. And when I went there, I thought that's where I need to build that sweat lodge. And I looked down and there was an eagle feather laying right there. So I was like, this is it. So that connection, right, to culture, to identity. And it was all through like dreams, right? Ceremonies, knowing that I had to go there. I could not fulfill that. And so I always think about like this talk about medicine and how medicine brought me to that place. The willow showed me where to go. And so when I think about ceremonial way of life, like I've been on the red path for 38 years now. And, and it was not an easy, path to get to that place because I was learning a lot about myself, and medicines really help to heal me. Like I'm burning sage right now. It seems to like just balance everything out. It takes away anything that's ailing me, and it's cleaning up the room right now as we speak. So I just love that. So I'm really happy to be here today. And that's just a little small little story of the things that we do when we start to heal ourselves. Okay, so that means like being on the red path is not drinking and drugging. I put all that stuff down when I realized that my inner child was crying out for help, and I needed to honor myself and my spirit and follow through on what I need to do in my life and lift up the responsibilities and the gifts that Creator gifted to me to help me along the way.
That's so beautiful. I love that. And I think that's what we'll do is like, there's not a whole lot of structure. I have some slides, but I think just like a storytelling for each other, I think that would just be a beautiful way to run this today. And I got like goosebumps when you said, "Oh, I saw that eagle feather there," and then that was the spot. I was like, "Oh, yes, it was." I love that. Yeah, amazing. So, So you started traditional medicine or knowing about it and healing yourself with it um, for quite a few years, actually. So what do you feel like now? Do you feel like you're still doing that inner healing, inner child work, or do you feel like things have transitioned? Like, what do traditional medicines like do for you now?
So for me, it's like I've come a long way,
Mm-hmm.
and I'm still learning every day.
Mm-hmm.
And traditional medicines, I need to reset myself still. I feel like I'm like as I get older, I feel like I'm getting younger. That's what they say. Like my hair is turning white. Some people start losing their hair, their teeth, right? But I feel like I'm turning into a teenager, and then who knows, like because but I find that the medicines have always helped me. And
Mm-hmm.
even today, because we're living through a lot of epidemics, we're living through like I'm a mother. I'm not a grandmother yet, but that's on its way. And I always think about how the children, how they've helped me to find out who I am. They're like
Mm-hmm.
the greatest teachers I've ever had, eh?
Yeah.
And so whatever I've learned from the traditional medicines, I keep passing it on. I
Mm-hmm.
don't keep it to myself. I share it with whoever wants to learn. Okay. And that's
Mm-hmm.
one thing that I find when you find something that helps you, you need to pass it on.
Mm-hmm.
And a lot of people are sometimes too shy or they don't seem to feel that's important, but I feel it's very important to make our ancestors very happy and to carry on these messages and how like the medicinal properties in the medicine and how it helps you each and every day. So some
Mm-hmm.
days, like I say, like I need to reset myself sometimes 10 times a day, right? Like just to kind of get myself to a place because we're all living through as Indigenous people, and not only Indigenous people, but people throughout the world as human beings. We're working through so many different things, especially if we've gone through a lot of disparities and a lot of like atrocities, trauma,
Mm-hmm.
tragedies, right, that we've witnessed through our life.
Mm-hmm.
Trying to find out who we are as a human being.
Yeah.
Because when you're lacking identity and culture, language, it's like you're trying to find your way back to you, back to
Mm-hmm.
home. So I find that, yeah, the sacred medicines really, and there's so much to learn. I'm still learning about them. Like for
Mm-hmm.
instance, like I always like after I clean off all the sage, okay, I would put this in the bush or I would burn it in the fire and you can smell it. And then I found out in the last little while, through Al Hunter, and he's a medicine man. He said that, his son actually shared it with me, the teachings, his Skabe, Graham Hunter. He said, oh, my dad, what he does with the stems, he uses it to make a tea to help people with grief, to help people with
Oh,
anxiety. And they
I
also said something else, but I don't know yet. I still have to go and talk about this other because if that's the case, I'm gonna have to give my partner some medicine.
yeah. I did not know that. Literally every
Yeah,
time I'm done with that, I'm like, oh, okay, I'm gonna go put this back in. I didn't even think to like make a
yeah.
tea with those stems.
And I have buffalo sage here, which is a hardy sage, right? And it has
Mhm.
like these really thick leaves, if you could see that, and it
Yeah.
smells so aromatic, and I feel like it just brings me back to the fields where the Bajiki, the bison are, the buffalo.
Mm,
But during COVID, they told me to make some tea, and I needed to make tea out of cedar,
okay.
out of red willow, which is inner bark and outer bark of the red willow, which is our tobacco, right? And it looks like this when it's dried.
Mm,
So I have to mix this with the cedar. So red willow with cedar with wike, which is bitter root, and
mhm.
the stems of buffalo sage.
Oh,
So you don't throw the stems out either. And I'm telling you, when I would boil the spring water, because you don't use tap water, right? Because it has a lot of ammonia, chlorine, all
ew.
kinds of stuff. So they say to use go and get spring water. So I boil the spring water and then I put the branches of cedar in there,
Mhm.
and then the red willow, and then the weekay.
Mm.
And it was just turning sort of a nice greenish color, right? And then I put the stems of the buffalo sage in there, and it made it look like red rose tea.
Oh my
And it tastes
God,
like
what?
red rose tea. And I'm like, oh my gosh, this is so cool. So I made tea like you make things because there's a purpose. There's a why you need to do it because our family got COVID, right? So I made a big batch of COVID and I was making batches for other people too, eh? And
Mm-hmm.
so see what like I'm learning all the time. And I wish I had the opportunity to go to that medicine camp with Kathy Bird. I
Mm-hmm.
would love to be able to have that experience. And a lot of the knowledge that I carry come from ceremonies, come from darkroom
Mm-hmm.
ceremonies, comes from Sundance, being at sweat lodges and going to get healing myself. And that's where a lot of this information, this beautiful medicinal teachings come from. Yeah. Oh, look at that picture. I love it.
That's my papa and his granddaughter or one of my little cousins. Yeah. So it's because I always like kind of, and what you're sharing is kind of what this is saying, which is it's medicine. So I remember my first recollection of traditional medicines really started when I was young and my Mishomis, my grandpa, my papa. Once we went fishing, and so then we stopped in the middle of the lake because there were lily pads, but it was very, very deep. And I was like, oh, I wonder what we're doing here. And then he had this really, really large pole and with a hook. So he would pull deep down at the bottom of the lake and then he would bring up these roots. And I just was like, oh, but like this isn't fish. As a little kid, I'm like, I don't understand. I'm like, oh, okay. I was like, Papa, what's this? Like, why are we stopping? And I remember he just like kind of was a pause. He's like, it's medicine. And that was the answer. And then I realized as I was growing up that so many things are medicine. Like I remember being like, he always says that. He always says it's medicine. And then as I got older, I was like, oh, it's because it is. Like so many things exist in our natural environment, in our natural world to help us with our health and our well-being. And so then I was like, it is like all medicine. And yeah, I really appreciate being able to um, like yeah, learn from traditional medicine keepers. And I really love also like the sweat lodges that you were talking about to for purification, because I find that sweat lodges, at least in our family, like how they would do it is like people would come, they would have their offering, they would have their tobacco, and we'd have our lodge built. And so um, people would, I remember being really little and people like like people I've never seen in my life. I'm like, where did this person come from? Like, I've never seen them before. And like, sure enough, they had traveled like 20 hours from another province, like somewhere. And that's the thing too, is like the access to these things, right? Like someone had to drive, like, and then they would, kind of talk with him and tell him what was going on so that he could then in Anishinaabe like communicate that. Um, and like people had like lung sickness, like sometimes lots of times it was like substance use, arthritis, even cancer treatment, like people who, and it was people who often like Western medicine in some way had failed them. Like they had tried, like there was a lot of treatment failure, or like people had, received really racist healthcare, and so they didn't trust the things that were being told to them, and you kind of feel that as an Anishinaabe person, like it's kind of like Western medicine. I do think we need it, we do utilize it, and to some extent because of how we've been colonized, like we have no choice but to use their medicines to treat their sicknesses. And we have our own medicines that also treat our sicknesses. But I think of like how many people would come to the lodge and like, yeah, in your similar situation, like really broken, like really trying to like fix them, like heal themselves, heal their families, and then like healthcare not really being there for them. And I kind of get the sense too, where I'm like, when I see patients medically and like I kind of like have ruled everything out and like I can't medically explain this, like the next thing I do, and that's where Western medicine stops, right? Like, oh, we've done all the tests, we've done all the prescriptions, we've done all the treatments. Sorry, there's nothing else. Like, you're just gonna have to deal with it. And I feel like in our culture, that's never the case. Like, there's always something that can be done. Um, and it's because we're promoting healing rather than treating sickness. Like the way we think about it is different. And so sometimes when people aren't getting well, I'm like, okay, something about this, like I think we should talk like about spirituality. Like I think we should talk about like, do you feel like something's been put on you? Do you feel like something's following you? Like when's the last time you feasted your items? Like all of these things. And then sure enough, like that's usually like once everything has medically been exhausted in terms of what's going on. And then like look at all four quadrants of a human being and their spiritual health. And Western medicine really doesn't focus on that. And so I would always be like, yeah, like I think you should probably do a sweat, or however people practice culture. Not everyone does sweats. Like some people like go to church. They like there's all kinds of things, but I would say like this is like a spiritual problem that like needs a spiritual like fix. Like we need help with that way. So I just feel like seeing people come from long distances to access things because there's not access and because there's not a lot of it available, like in our hospital, right? Like I can't just like go to the regional and well, they're slowly building that, but like, go and then at the same time, like, wouldn't it be beautiful to have like a Western doctor and then at the same time have like a knowledge keeper and you did the visit exactly the same, right? Like I have to chart things. Traditional medicine people don't really write, stuff down. They just kind of hear and then, but just being able to do that process. And there are places in Canada that are starting to do that. But I just think like everything is medicine. And it seems like lots of people, not even from our own culture, like know that too. And it takes a long time, like you've said, to like years of learning from your own personal experience, from ceremonies. Yeah. And I think that's really beautiful.
And I think too, like when I look at the Western approach to healing, water, like the first medicine to help you, right? Like it's so powerful. And to give thanks to that water, it changes like they always say thank you, say miigwech to the medicine, right? And the medicine being water, because a lot of the times we feel sick because we're dehydrated. And people don't think to reach out to water right away. Like that's Nebe Manito Wabo, the spirit of the water is there to help you, right? And I also thinking like when you're talking about, you know, about the medicines and that approach, the Western approach, like food, like the food, like it's like you do all this work Western wise, and then the food though that's being ingested doesn't line up with all that great service and the medicine that's being, prescribed and so there's that sort of imbalance too when it comes to food, right? Like I think that there's a lot of work that needs to be done still in the Western way of administering medicine and helping people is the food is another aspect of it. Because I know in our culture, like in indigenous cultures, traditional bush foods are like key to our existence, right? So you're talking about like your dad fishing up the roots, the lily pad roots. I was thinking about the moose. And my mom always said, if you want to eat like moose root, like moose lily pad roots,
Yeah.
you eat moose meat. You want inner bark of a poplar tree, you eat beaver meat, like that's what she'd always say to us. Like, that's where we get the medicine is through the animals that are accessing and having survival because of the gittigans, the plant beings, right?
Yeah.
And that's where we get our medicine. And Kitty Everson, I remember sitting with her and she was just reminding me, it's like my mom was taught, I don't know, was just really, really beautiful because I felt like I could hear my mom talking through her. And I just thought, Jimmy Gooch for the reminder because I was kind of forgetting about the words of my mom and what she used to always tell us kids, that because we were raised on beaver meat and it tastes like roast beef. She made it taste so good. And I remember always seeing a nose and the tongue, right, of the moose. And I think about those days when I had my parents and all the memories, even though there was residential school and she went there and a lot of it was disrupted but she still had the language, if she had family tight around her and they practiced the cultural gathering, right? The harvesting of our traditional bush fruit food. So yeah, I think about that medicine also ingested and then is medicine to us human beings. So when I look at all these different animal and birds and fish that we ate, oh my goodness, look at all the good medicine that we're eating, eh? Yeah, so in giving thanks for those beings, our relatives, for giving us life, right? Yeah.
Exactly. No, you're so right. Like, because nutrition is such a big part. Like, I think of things like chronically that I see in the clinic, like diabetes and high cholesterol. And like, that was never an issue. Like, that was because of the foods that we ate, And it's just so many indigenous people in our country, like, just, and I think it's because of the food that we have access to and the food that we can eat. And it's so deep rooted. So when I think of like, yeah, you're so right. Like, some of the first thing, like how many times do people come in and I'm like, hey, have you prayed for your water? Have you talked to your water? Did you drink your water? Like, I just, even that's such a helpful reminder, even for myself. Or like, I love what you were saying about like how if there's like something that you need, like you can eat the animal of like that eats that medicine because then you're consuming it, right? Like, so it's like, yeah, like the beaver, the inner bark, and like just I didn't even really make that connection, like that you could just, yeah, like the animals that we do have, if you need that medicine, technically they have it. And we just, oh, that's such a beautiful, beautiful like way to think about things. And it just really like is really needed. I think of how many,
I remember like and you like being young and like blueberries is a big thing. And I remember that's all I wanted was blueberries and Saskatoon berries and raspberries and I
right?
was so excited about strawberries, and they're so tiny and how all these medicines help with like no wonder we didn't have diabetes because we were eating blueberries, right? And we were drinking my mom every time. Oh my gosh, when I smell birch bark burning, I think right away of muskeg tea, like Labrador tea. And that's another medicine that balances our blood out, And so, yeah, I think of all these traditional medicines. And to me, I don't think it's ever too late to get started. Like if
Mm-hmm.
you're just learning to, and make sure that whoever you go out on the land with, make sure they know what they're doing.
Mm-hmm.
That's really, really important that, you're picking the right medicine and you're ingesting, medicine that's not going to hurt you. Because, like, we all like that duality in the medicine world, right? That there's a twin that's not good for you, and then there's the other medicine that's really good for you.
Mm-hmm.
So, and that's I always really stress that because it's sometimes you think you're out there too with somebody who really knows a lot, but I always say stick to what you know, stick to what was taught to you and through ceremony, right? And through the people that are highly knowledgeable that have been raised in this life
Yeah.
and you can tell how confident they are because like they'll go and harvest all the leaves off of different plants and sprinkle some flowers on there and we send in, right? I was like, right on, cool, I'll eat that because there's so much confidence in that. And I was just like, this person knows
No.
what they're doing and I trust them, and you got to trust spirit too because you're
Mm-hmm.
into and intuitive spirit will say something's just not sitting right with me right now. You have
Mm-hmm.
to trust in that. It's not you're being disrespectful or anything. It's just you're listening to spirit too. Yeah.
Exactly. I totally had a slide about like a diabetes and blueberries specifically because like in the like just like society it's like a superfood, right? There's like certain superfoods that like exist in the world. Wild rice is one of them and blueberry is one of them, where it's super rich in antioxidants, and antioxidants are the things that like protect your cells from cellular damage. So when there's like pollution that's in the air, right, like our cells on a cellular level are being like targeted. And so when you eat, so that's why when we say blueberries are like anti-cancer, it's because they have so much antioxidants, which I think is just so like the flip side of it. And blueberry. So I always just thought it was like the blueberries itself, but then was taught you can actually use the blueberry leaf, like the leaves, like the little like to make those into a tea. And it actually, in addition to eating blueberries, the tea of that, it reduces blood sugars, and you don't have to release as much insulin, which insulin is the thing for diabetes when like you're like, oh, there's so much sugar going on in your body. And then so your pancreas has to like release insulin to actually use it. Because then otherwise you're just like sitting there's all this sugar floating, but your body's not using it. So your body thinks it's starving. And that's why people get low blood sugars, is because the insulin in their body is kind of like, wait a second, like we can't unlock the sugar. We can't even access the sugar. So it seems like you have high sugars because when you do the prick on your finger, right, it's high. But like, on a cellular level, you're not getting any. So I just feel like blueberry leaf tea, like it actually helps with insulin secretion and it stabilizes your sugars. And it's also like a good diabetes medicine because there's this anthocyanins, which is like the chemical word. So this is the other thing too, because for traditional medicines, like there's like the culture of like, because like when you hear something intuitively, like you say, you just know, you're like, yep, that's correct. I know that. And this is like tried true wisdom that's been here for thousands of years. But so then I like, in order to like kind of not prove, but like I feel like we're in a society where people think of traditional medicine as like alternative. It's like, oh, like, there's no science in that. And I'm like, no, there really is a ton of science. And this is one of them. So like that part of that blueberry, the anthocyanins, it helps like because sugar affects the blood vessel to your eye. That's why people get like blurry vision and stuff with diabetes, is because the sugar, it damages little blood vessels. So your eyes, your fingers, that's why they get numb, or your toes, right? Because they're just like small blood vessels. And so what that will do actually, that part of the blueberry, it protects like the retina, which is the nerve that helps you see. So like people who have like, they're like, oh, my vision is blurry, from my diabetes. It's because there's retinal damage. The nerve to the eye is being damaged. And so that blueberry leaf tea or those blueberries helps because it helps like regenerate that, and it helps prevent like the nerve from getting worse so that you can see better. So I just think that was like so cool. Like you just are like, you're like talking about the blueberries. I'm like, yeah. Like, and so I love, no, I don't think we have to, there's nothing to prove. Like there's just millennia of knowledge. But I think when I can find like, studies or things that will help convince my colleagues that I'm not like crazy for suggesting things like this, because we live in like a society where like, oh, that knowledge, because it was in a study, that means like it's more robust, it's more accurate, and like that's totally not the case. And like we've just as a society, like white culture essentially has like decided that like, oh, that's what we think is the best knowledge. So I just think what you were saying, it just like really really reminded me of that. And even just like the calories that are in a blueberry, like so there's 51 calories in like a cup of blueberries, which is a really small amount, right? It's not a lot of calories, hence why people can eat like blueberries and like not really get super full. But like in the 30 minutes of you just being out on the land, like you offer your tobacco, you go pick those blueberries, 30 minutes, you're burning 302 calories just from going out and picking it. So like it's also like a diabetes treatment for everything, because you're actually burning off, that's how many calories you burn off for 1 hour of picking picking the blueberries. So I think it's just, yeah, like so amazing.
Like being out on the land, right? Like that's another, medicine that people don't realize. Like I
Mm-hmm.
always say, like if you're feeling like, you're having a horrible mental health day, say,
Mm-hmm.
or you're feeling depressed. I always say to people, what works for me is I get myself outside. I don't care how cold it is or if it's raining out. I just need to get outside and go and breathe. That deep breathing, go outside, do some deep breathing, go for a walk. Even if it's just a short walk around the block,
Mm-hmm.
it makes a big difference. Or even if you can get out in the bush and and walk amongst all, Mitikanabe, the tree,
Mhm.
the spirit of the trees. Like I'm telling you, like you'll feel rejuvenated, you'll feel better. I even remember, like, this is just like about 3 days ago. I felt really lethargic. I felt really like drained of a lot of my energy. And I thought, you know what? I'm gonna go for a swim because I feel like that water's gonna just like do something for me. And I really felt like I needed that water was calling me.
Mm.
So I did. And it was cold. But I just felt when I came out, I just felt like all my body was just like tingling, and I felt like I'm alive, like I feel great again. So like this medicine comes in not only in Giddy-Gons and the our plant relations, but also in the environment, right?
Mhm.
And when you're, like you say, even going to harvest the different medicines that we need, we're working out, we're walking, we're moving our blood, we're, getting that exercise, and just, being out there is another form. It's like you're getting a triple whammy when you're out there of good medicine.
Yeah.
So yeah, so I think about that too every time I go outside. And like if you do suffer from mental illness or from depression, or it could be like, you had a tough day at work, or the kids have stressed you out. Get yourself and the kids outside. That I find that's the best medicine in the world too.
Totally is. And there's like so much like studies that have proven that, like where people, that's like a treatment for depression, like they've done, like I think it was like a Scandinavia or something, Scandinavian countries, where people would walk around in forests and they would do like tree walks, and then that would be like in and of itself a treatment for depression. And so people, like, I think it's not just like so many other cultures, I think like, yeah, are like have realized historically and are like realizing these connections of like things that we inherently do, things that our like ancestors like wrote into the DNA. Hey, you should go out in the bush, right? Like that's, I feel like, in all, and like in Anishinaabe people's brain is to be connected to the land because you just feel so much better. I feel like yeah, like it's so amazing to think like so many activities we do like naturally have health benefits. Spiritually, of course, but like also physically, like so many. And so I also add this slide of like how long it took me to be a Western doctor. So 10 years of training, that's how long I was in school for. And then, 4 years that I've been in practice, which is like more experience, right? And just like really how you were saying that we like never stop learning, and no one's like really an expert because there's always more to learn. Like I just feel like you say, it's good to be around people who are knowledgeable. Um, and also like I just have deep reverence and respect for knowledge keepers and people who know about the lands and the medicines and the plants, because like this is how long it took me to be a Western doctor. And like people who have been practicing traditional medicine and like learning about that, like it's just like a drop. Like my 10 years is like nothing compared to their like lived experience. Because it's so powerful. um, and kind of similar to what you were saying before about like you need to have belief in creator and like faith in creator. Because one of the things that I was taught about traditional medicines is like if someone's like, oh, I'm going to give you yarrow, I'm going to give you blueberry tea, and it's already in your head that you're like, oh, that's not going to work, like, oh, that's not going to work, like then it's not going to work. Because in my head I was like, oh, it's the medicines, they're doing everything for us, and medicines have chemical properties that help with our health. But like it's, as I think someone said, like, oh, look at this graph, see that 90%, that traditional medicine, how it works is creator, a belief in prayer and creator that like it's actually going to help, because if you don't think it is then it's not going to, but if you do think it is then it will. Then there's like, the actual medicine. Like I think about when you were like, oh, I'm smudging my air, like sage, like back in like the 1600s in Europe, that's what they would do. They would go around hospitals with sage because it has like antimicrobial properties for the air. So hospitals, like Western European hospitals, would like bring sage around because they like didn't really have like infection protocol. So that was their way of like trying to clear the air. Um, So there's like the medicine, the chemical part of it. And then like I was like, and she's like, and my teacher, Kathy, she was like, see that one little sliver, that 1%? She's like, that's you. You aren't the person making the medicine work. You're just the person helping gather and give it. And so I think that's a really different way of looking at Western versus traditional medicine, right? Because for me, I'm like, well, I'm the person that picked the I'm the person who picked the antibiotics that you're going to get. Like, it's because, it's there's, and so it's such a bizarre concept for my colleagues to, be like, what? Like, you don't believe that antibiotics are going to work. They're just going to work. And I'm like, no, that's not how I think about, yeah, maybe. But like, I just think that, yeah, the belief in prayer, like, it's just like, and the person giving it to you, they're just a small part of it. Everything else is like your faith in that medicine. So if you're doubting it, it's just not going to work. And so I got humbled really quickly in terms of like, oh, like that tiny little sliver. I'm like, that's you. And I'm like, oh, okay. Good to know. Like, I didn't really, because it's the practice of humility and our teaching of like that's, you just get humbled really quickly, being like, nope, it's creator doing this work. That's not you. Like, that's not you doing that. It's the medicine and the creator. And I'm like, okay, good.
And that's so true, right? Like, because that's what they always say with the tobacco, like put your tobacco down. And sort of like Tina Armstrong, she'd always say, get out of the way then, and let creator do its creator's work, right? And so, and I always think like, when I put my tobacco down too, it's like you want to take back stuff though. It's like, so to me, it's like put your tobacco down and then let creator do the work, let the medicine do the work, whether it's Western medicine, traditional medicine, right? Because with all of like the assimilation and conversion, colonialism and all that sort of thing, and that sort of mindset of like, our medicines don't work, but the Western medicines work, as opposed to like, people coming full circle and reclaiming culture, way of life. And then you see, and I've seen so many of testimonies of people who have gone the Western way for healing, and they were seeing a medicine person at the same time ingesting medicine. And these are serious complications with some people, with tumors and all kinds of cancerous, whether it's cancerous or benign, right? And I've seen it. And, doctors would say, what are you taking? And we're like, well, I don't even know what I'm taking. I just trust the medicine that's giving me this medicine and I'm taking it, right? And it's just wild because I've had so many people tell me things that medicine people have prescribed for them and they believed in it. They believed in the medicine, but they were also going for surgery too to have something removed, or going to get, that part and sort of bringing the two together. But I remember this doctor had shared with this one person saying, once they opened this person up twice, right? Because the one doctor thought that this person had cancer and sewed the person right back up and said, there's nothing we can really do for you. And then this person went to another specialist just to see if there was anything else. And working with Western and working with indigenous medicines, right? And so he went for that second surgery. And when he came to and came out of that surgery, they just said to this person, what were you like, what kind of medicine were you taking? And he couldn't divulge it because he didn't know. But they said, that medicine, whatever you're taking, dissolved the tumor, was dissolving this huge tumor, and really encouraged this person to continue to take the traditional medicine. So, and they said they figured that if this person would have continued on just with the medicine, it would have dissolved.
Yeah.
And so like it's just like you say, and it is all in belief and putting that prayer out there and really believing that this medicine, whichever way you're gonna go, right, is gonna work. And you gotta believe in that. it's power, it's mind over matter, right? Like a lot of the times it's like really putting in your mind, I am going to, you know, really work on this and do all the right things I need to do to heal. So I really see that too, and I do the same thing. I'm like, I fell really bad just recently, and I thought I broke my back, and I thought that was it. No sewing, no beating, no doing anything, no going out to the bush. And I slid down these stairs, and I felt so like unwell. But I said it to my mind, I said, you know what? I'm gonna stand up in a few minutes. I told my body that I am good. I'm gonna give myself to kind of get my composure back in that, but I'm going to stand up, okay? Like I'm just pleading for, like I'm gonna get up and I'm gonna stand up and I'm gonna walk out of here kind of deal. And I think like mind over matter, because right away it was defeat. Oh, I'm not gonna be able to do this or that. So it's mind over matter too, right? And your heart is so strong that my heart just couldn't see me just giving up right there and then. So I was fighting and asking my mind to please allow me to stand up. So I was able to stand up after that horrible fall, right? And I was like, okay, so there's that power too, right? Of positive thinking. You want to get well, you have to really fight the negative. And these medicines will help you too, the ones that you really believe in. Because I believe in Western ways too. Like we've been taught that, we've seen it works too. So like bringing the two together so there's balance there. Yeah.
Yeah, and I think you're right. Like it's not just like you also need belief. Like it's not just like but like, I think of like antibiotic. Like if you don't believe like an antibiotic is going to work, again, it's mind over matter. It doesn't matter that like that was made in a pharmaceutical industry. Like it's like, you know what I mean? You're so right. Because I think, well, Creator gave us free will. So like if what you're thinking, like that's what you're drawing towards you. So if, whatever you think is right, like what, like you are whatever you think and what you say, that is what is going to happen. That's what you're going to think and say, because like even just the physics of like we're made of electrons and like energy connecting, like is attracted to like, and in this sense, sometimes people think, well, it's polar opposites, but you know energetically, like the electrons are attracted to like, and so you will naturally draw in things that you might not be intending to because of how your mind is thinking. You're so right. The mind over matter, so powerful, because people could be like, oh, like I'm even just like about their social situations, like, oh, I'm never going to get out of this situation. I'm always going to be living in this not good house. I'm never going to have money for food. And then I just feel like when you set that in your mind, like then that's your reality. Like that's your truth versus like, I'm so abundant. I have so much like traditional foods. I live such a beautiful life. I'm so grateful for everything. And then those are the things that start to pop in. So I feel like there's like medical examples of that. There's like social examples of that. But it is a matter of like, if you don't think like you have to really believe in whatever it is you're doing in order for it to be effective, I think, at least for your physical health. Um, yeah. So, um,
I was just gonna say something too. There's so like it's like that mind, body, and spirit, or if you want to
mhm,
look at the spirit, the emotions, physical and intellectual being, it's
mhm,
like making sure that we feed those four parts, right? And to create that holistic feeling inside your being.
mhm,
So like to me it's really important to have balance. If you can find balance there, oh, and I feel like myself, I'm always trying to achieve the balance. And
mhm.
there's always like they always say like, it's like a car, and a lot of the times I feel like one tire is a little flat because it's not getting the attention that it needs, right? So, and
Mhm,
you'll know what that area looks like, whether you're not feeding your intellect enough or you're
mm,
not getting enough physical activity. That sort of thing is like finding that balance. So
mhm.
nobody's perfect, but always trying to achieve that feeling good, feeling well.
The balance. You're so right. And I think, yeah, there's sometimes a hyper focus in Western knowledge systems on like the physical. Okay, but physically what's happening versus I think of so many like there's like a lot of things in medicine that people call like kind of like somatic disorders. Like people mentally are experiencing something and then it manifests as a physical symptom. And lots of times there's kind of like a little bit of like stigma about like, oh, well, that's like not really real. Like you have a somatic body disorder. It's because you're depressed and that's why, you're getting these hives or these random symptoms that people get. It's like, oh, it's your body expressing it. And then that being like, well, there's nothing we can do because it's all in your mind. And then we're like, wait, yes, there is. There's so much you can do. What? Like practice culture, language, like connect with community. Like there's so many things to treat the mental, but yeah, there's lots of illnesses that start off like in the body and then they have like mental or like emotional manifestations or the opposite, spiritual injuries that then manifest as like physical ailments, like, feeling like you have to like hold up the world because you look after your family, maybe you're a Native woman and you have to hold everything up on your shoulders because you have to keep everything together because the family structure is going to collapse if not. Like that in and of itself is like spiritual injury because then people like I just like, then they're like their shoulders, like, you just like the weight of literally the world, if that's what you're holding on to, it starts to like move your shoulders down. And then when that happens, like you start to get tightness here. And then as a result of this tightness in your traps, because you're always like leaning forward, you're like, oh, like it's just not good. Like, or like, I don't know my language. Yesterday was TRC reconciliation day. I just feel not good. And then you like lean forward. And so then you start like closing in like this. And so then your muscles start to contract. And then because muscles are supposed to like, we have body mechanics, right? Ways that muscles and organs and limbs are supposed to move. And so when you're in this position, right? Like I can't really move my arm that well. I can't really move my back or my neck that well. So then, yeah, all of a sudden now I have headaches from something that started as like the weight of the world, or like now all of a sudden I've injured my elbow or my hand because this muscle was too tight. So the body mechanic of trying to do this was off. And so then I did something. And then, so I just feel like it's all connected and we really need to focus on all four parts of it because sometimes like one source of injury, like spiritual, emotional, mental, physical, like it then proceeds to affect all those other realms. Like it's not just like the physical, like it's so much more than that.
That's what they always say when you go to ceremony, eh? Like I remember going there, oh, and I had such a sore neck. Like, and I
Mm-hmm.
was going in for healing.
Mm-hmm.
And so of course the medicine man said, you're carrying too much. That's
Mm-hmm.
what he said. So you need to start finding ways to like undo the like burdens that you feel like you're carrying.
Yeah.
He would say to me, you need to start taking a look at that. And and they always say, you already know what you
You
gotta
already do
do.
this. You already know this. You're like, oh, you're right. I
What?
do. Like, I feel so called out. They're like, you know what you need to do, Alexa. And I'm like, whew,
I know,
whew.
right? Even like, you have dreams of, like, well, what did that dream really mean? Well, you already know what that dream means, right? And you're going around trying to find answers and then you come realize, you know what? Yeah, the dream told me that I need to, take better care of myself.
Exactly. I'm like all the ways. Yeah. It's so funny when people say, you already know what you need to do. They're like, I don't know what to do. I'm like, yeah, you do. I'm like, oh, okay. I'm like, that's too much trust in myself. And it's like, trust your spirit. Like, literally, all human beings have the essence of creator within them. Like our spirit. We've come from stardust. We've literally come from the sky world, the star world. And so I just feel like it's like that intuition part, like you do know when you need to do something for your health. You're like, oh, I really need to be doing that more. I need to be really walking more. I need to be really like connecting more. Um, and you have that intuitive sense, and that's like really spirit because I feel like we're just spiritual beings in like a human body experience. Like, but like our bodies aren't. At least this is my way of thinking is that like our bodies are like kind of flesh. Like that's the thing that we're in right now. But like truly we are spiritual beings. Like that's the inner essence of who we are. So like also, like when you have physical issues, like that's just a part of the experience you're having. That's not who you are. So when people say like they're really committed to like a diagnosis of sickness, of illness, they're like, well, I'm always this, like this is a part of my, like where sickness becomes a part of people's identity because they've just like adapted, like they've just like taken it on, like that's all I am, that's all I, like I'm just, I'm just a cancer patient and all of this stuff, and people take that on. And I'm like, but like that's not the essence of your spirit. Maybe that's a part of your like, experience on this earth as in a human flesh body, but like your spirit and your essence, like anything that doesn't feel like love and light, like that's not coming from your spirit. Do you know what I mean? Like it's like like spirit only feels that way. So like I just yeah.
No, I'm talking and I'm like trying to mute myself. But it's that knowing, and you want to just not even look at that, right? So, and you know what's going to help you. And I don't know why we got to find, like, there's got to be something wrong with me. I've never been a pill popper either.
Mm-hmm.
So I remember they wanted to put me on antidepressants and all kinds of stuff when I first started to realize that I need to start fulfilling this inner child that was telling me to take better care of me, that this is not me, how I was living my life. And in order for me to get well, that I had to put down some things like drinking and drugging and all that kind of stuff, right?
Mm-hmm.
And so and I look at like the things that come and help you along the way to achieve that, well-briety, to feel better, like,
Mm-hmm.
and when I look at that world and I think, oh man, it was like it changes really, it's not easy,
Mm-hmm.
but you put one foot in front of each other and you make this commitment to yourself that
Mm-hmm.
you want to get well, it'll happen. It
Mm-hmm.
will happen. And it's through medicines. It's through, like, I drank cedar tea, learned how to make cedar tea properly, right? You learn all these things
Mm-hmm.
about the different medicines that help you. I remember drinking peppermint tea because that was like during Sundance, right? And they always came to give you, peppermint tea, mint tea,
Mm-hmm.
to help soothe your stomach. Because, like there was so much, like when you abuse yourself too through addictions and everything, you'll see like all these things like, my throat's always sore. I always got a headache. And I'm like, okay, well, look, what are you doing? I'm smoking too much, right? Okay, I gotta quit smoking. Like it's just all kinds of things that you start realizing in order to have a good life and to feel good, you have to get rid of the things that are holding you down. And
Yeah.
sometimes it's not easy, but you know what? You put one step ahead of each other, you'll get there. And you keep, even if you say you want to live a better life, keep saying that because you will.
Mm-hmm.
You will, and don't feel like some people will say, "Oh, you say you're gonna, quit, or you're gonna, you're gonna go running today, or whatever it is that you say you're gonna do, and you didn't do it." Don't let those people get the best of you. You're human. At least you're saying that you're gonna do it. Just keep doing it. Keep saying it. Doesn't matter what people are saying, because it's in the end, it's you. You're the only one that can help yourself. My brother, Ernest Boyce, he always told me that, but he always said to me, he goes, Audrey, I'm just letting you know you're the only one that can take care of you. And I'm like, that was such a like, oh, that was a real blow, but it was true. And I tell that to my children, my family. I tell that to people. The only one that can take good care of you is you.
Mm-hmm.
And the things that are holding you down or the things that aren't making you well. So it's just that making that commitment to make those changes to feel, good health and to feel better about who you are as a human being.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
You're so right. So right. I'm learning so much from you, Audrey. Speaking of, so how do you make cedar tea? So, because like the way I was taught, yeah, so using the spring water, which like if you don't have a place like where you can actually go and like physically bring a jug to a natural, I just feel like so many water sources are contaminated. You could just kind of pick up like a jug of spring water, then you do that and you can put maybe like couple bows, like depending, like I think it's like almost like a hand amount per 1 liter of water. But I also just kind of eyeball it. I'm like, oh, this seems good. And then I put it in and I boil it for about 10 minutes. And then I'll take the cedar out because then I know after a certain point, if you boil cedar for too long, then you start to get some of the like not good stuff of cedar. So you don't want it like sitting there for like hours on end or boiling and getting all the medicinal properties out. So is that how you do it, or like how do you do your cedar tea?
So what I usually do is I go collect it outside of the urban settings, like,
Hmm.
but sometimes, like, I've got a big lineup of white cedar outside of my doorway here, which
Hmm.
sometimes I'm like, I need cedar. And I'm like, oh, thank you. Like, and some people say smudge it down right away and then I wash it off, right? Especially if it's in the
Hmm.
city, because all kinds of dust goes on the branches and that. But
Right.
I really do work at going, oh, there's my good friend Laura. Oh my gosh, I love that woman. So I go out to the bush and get the cedar, the white cedar, right? Because there's different types of variety of cedar that's around too. So I like to get the white cedar that, is a natural cedar that grows in the area.
Mhm.
And then I'll bring like do the offering. Sometimes if I'm really sick, I do food offerings too. I'll give thanks, say, to the tree and put my tobacco down and pray to the tree and ask the tree to please help me if I'm sick or help somebody else that's sick. And there's always a reason why I'm going to go harvest that medicine. It's not because I'm just going to go harvest it just in case I need it or whatever. I go
Mhm.
to get it when there's a request, or if somebody's sick, I'll go, or if I'm sick, I'll go. And so I bring it home. I have my big pot of water, right? Spring water. I'll put my branches in there, like you say. It's usually one nice Gisha Gandage, one nice branch per liter of water. So you can get a 4 liter jug and then bring that to, 4 nice branches. And like you say, I eyeball it to, I'm like, throw in a couple more little branches. And so I'll put it in there. The trick is though, put a lid on.
Oh,
Yeah, you always put the lid on your medicine, because what happens if you don't put the lid on and you're
evaporate.
boiling it with no, yeah, all your, not unless you want it to go all through your house and clean up everything. And if there's anything weird happening in your home, it will help whatever it is that's there, whether it's a spirit or what have you, negative energy, it'll just lift it and take it out. And I always open up a window too, just so that, like, in my mind, I'm gonna let it free. Let
Get
it
out!
free. And so if you want to do that, then leave the lid off. But if you want it for medicine, for tea for you, and have all that vitamin C and medicinal properties in there,
Mhm.
put a lid on it,
Mhm.
bring it to a boil, turn it down on low, let it simmer, and I keep an eye on it, not unless I'm yip yapping and I'm on open fire and I'm talking to people, and then I'm like, oh my gosh, my tea, and I'm
Yeah.
running to my tea, right? And I'm like, and then there's the oil slick, and I'm like, oh, I went too far with it, you
Oh,
know? So then it becomes toxic.
yeah.
That's what I've been taught, eh? So you have to really keep a good eye on your tea. So once it starts to boil, turn down the heat or take it off the fire, like put it on the side and let it just simmer there for about 10 to 15 minutes. And you'll know I go in there and I'll stir it, and you'll
Yeah.
see like white little crystallized things too.
Yeah.
So I'll be stirring it and just checking to see, like having a spoon and just seeing it, because I like it a nice, like a kind of a
Amber.
yellowy green,
Yeah.
yeah, color. I don't like it to goes too dark, then it becomes toxic.
Yeah.
Then I lift all the medicines out. I
Mm.
don't leave them in there.
Yeah.
I'll lift them out because all the medicine's gone into the water now. So I'll lift it out. I'll put it into a wooden bowl or whatever kind of bowl you have, or maybe you got like a pail that you're gonna take it back out to the bush, and give it thanks for helping you, because I just don't throw it in the garbage.
Mm.
It'll go back out in the bush, and you don't have to drive way like 20 kilometers away. You can
Yeah.
find
Yeah.
some bush somewhere and just put it there, eh? And then you can have glass jars that you recycle, like
Mm.
that you can put your medicine in there and put it in the fridge and heat it up whenever you want on the stove. Yeah,
Mm.
that's what you could do. So that's I like drinking it fresh, and But if if I made a lot for people, I'll put it in the fridge and people like I'll have it. And so if somebody says, "Hey, you got any cedar tea?" I'm like, "Yeah, I do. Actually, I have some actually made." So that's how I make mine. And I don't mix stuff with mine. Like some people will mix I find like it's kind of dangerous mixing things because some things don't shouldn't be together. So some people think you can mix this and that and everything together, but I like just having, if I'm going to go for cedar, I'm going for cedar, you know. If I'm going to have mint, I'm going for mint. But there's some people, it depends on the teacher, and like some teachers like mixing things together, that's cool too. If you're into that, then by
Mm.
all means, and it's good for you, that you'll know, your intuition will say, you know what, I want to mix some mint in with that. Just like that COVID medicine, right? That was a teaching, and I'm like, I felt comfortable with that. So I went with that, right? And it really helped our family,
Mm.
like to repair ourselves, our lungs, everything, eh? Yeah.
Well, I think you like really touched on like some key things in terms of traditional medicine, which is like kind of like the principles and like how you should do things,
Mm.
like kind of how you like talk to the plant, what you offer, like I always like, of course, everyone is taught like Sema first because that's like the activator. That's like things that's like how you're able then to connect to spirit and only taking what you need. And at least for me, like because I'm so new, like I'm at a point where like I'll go through some cases of like things where I can suggest certain traditional medicines to patients, but it's very limited. And it's like, and then for myself, because I'm still like learning how to identify stuff, I was taught to have at least 3 different ways to confirm that you have the right plant. Like some traditional medicine, my teacher, she just goes out there, oh, da, 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 and like it's perfect. I'm like, that doesn't even look like the picture. Like I don't even know how you knew that, but like especially if you're new, because you say like there's like kind of there's something, and it's always nearby. The plant that you think is the one that's like has the medicinal, and then it's like toxic, kind of like poisonous relative, and that's nearby. So like you need at least 3 ways, for myself anyways, to identify that I have the right plant, whether it's like the particular flower, or like mint, it has a stem that's like a square, right? Like if it's not a square and I'm like, I think this is mint, so like I'll smell it, and then I'll kind of taste it, and then I'll look at the root, or I'll like look at the stem. I'm like, okay, I have 3 different ways in which I'm like, I'm pretty sure this is right. And just as you build confidence, because like this is so, not lots of people grow up this way, or like they're just coming to know it now, or like finally like they feel good about like talking about, because it was so shamed and secretive for so long. So now people are starting to like, yeah, they didn't grow up that way. Maybe their family didn't teach them about those things. So I think as you slowly build confidence, then you can try and like hard, like but kind of pick the picture perfect looking one. Like if I have a plant and I'm like, it doesn't look like the picture, I just kind of am like, okay, I don't have enough experience. I'm just gonna like move on to the next place. And also just checking out like medicines and our plant relatives at different seasons, because how you think something looks in the spring versus the fall, I'm like, oh, that's not that plant. And my teacher will say, yes, it is. You just need to go out more on the land and actually look and see how it's transitioning for the seasons. I'm like, oh, right. She's like, because plants aren't static. Like in the same way that we go through changes during the seasons, plants do too. And then of course, like leaving things as if you weren't there, or like leaving things better than like what you started with. I was also taught to like, I think you mentioned this earlier about like trying to not like harvest things that are near specific things. So like hydropoles and train tracks, like you find so much sage, I feel like near those, like you find so many medicine near those areas. But if you can, you should really try and avoid being in a hydropole area or like train tracks, because they spray pesticides, because they don't want to have to like maintain it, right? Like they don't want to have to go to the train tracks and dig up all the like the roots and all the like weeds, as they call it. So they'll spray lots of pesticides. There's actually lots of chemicals around hydropoles and around train tracks. So like if you can, like I always try not to go in those areas. And even just like, yeah, the experience of like knowing in an area. Like sometimes like I remember being like, oh, I might go here. And I was talking to someone and they're like, you shouldn't go there. Like that place had mercury mining poisoning for like a long time. Like you like, and I'm like, oh, or like that area was sprayed with pesticides. It's not like, and I'm just, so I feel like knowing, like having relationships with the land and also knowing like the actual like territory and the ecological region like has chemical pollutants, like has something happened to that area, like really know where you're harvesting, and then kind of like pick the picture perfect, like as a beginner at least, like that would be my suggestion, is to just like, yeah, really try and like also even just like from water, like because there's lots of like, for example, those lily pads that were on that lake when I was like with my papa. I think of like, you know, my teacher said, don't, if the water looks dirty, like it looks like, you know, super, super dirty and yucky, like even though like, but the plant is like within the water, that plant has technically absorbed everything that's there. So like even try and avoid like, you know, you're like sometimes I'm like, oh, this is the plant. I'm like, I see it. It's perfect. I want to get it. And then I'll look and I'll be like, no, it's like just like, you know, dirty, like yucky, polluted water. And I'm like, oh man, like, but it's just like try and avoid if you can. And even like what, like cleanliness, washing your hands and your tools. This is something I didn't really realize, because you might like cut something, right? But then if that plant had disease and then you're going and like getting another medicine and then the illness scissors, right? Like, because we don't like, there's so many things with climate crisis happening where like our medicines, yeah, are like they're turning like they're being harmed and like getting more disease, like because they're susceptible to it, right? Because of the environment it's in. And so like having clean and wash tools, like if there's like sap on something, you know, like just give that a like a rinse so that when you do the next thing, in case that thing had, you know, some type of fungal disease, and then you go and then you spread it to somewhere else that didn't have it before. So I feel like, yeah, those are all kind of principles or like things that you're talking, ways that you should like do things in a good way.
And that's what I was been taught too, like having a relationship with the Gideons, right? The plant beings, and talking to them, but also like not like being rough either. Like when I'm out there, it's like, like sometimes you're like rushing to, because like I was taught, like you go harvest midday when all the dew is lifted,
Mm,
and that, that it's nice and dry, the plants, but
yeah.
also to have that relationship when you're talking to the plants, and that to use your hands. If you can
Mm,
snap the stem with your hands and having that relationship.
yeah.
And if you really need a scissors or a knife, then go ahead, but always work it out so you can at least,
Mhm,
harvest some of it with your hands. That's
mhm,
what I was told. And I remember, sometimes you're rushing because the sun is going, like they say, as soon as the sun hits the tree line, you gotta, you should stop harvesting, because it's like respecting the plant world, right? Like that,
mm,
even when it's raining, not to harvest the medicines, because they're getting nurtured, they're eating, they're having their food,
mm,
eh?
yeah.
And so and I've done a lot of teachings and training with that, especially in like in organizations, government. They think, oh, well, we need to harvest this stuff today, so you're going to go out and get it. And I'm like, I'm sorry, but it's raining out. That goes against spiritual protocol that I've been taught, so I won't be going out today to do that. But it's like they don't take our spiritual protocol into place until you start doing that work with your organization, or whether it's a government or a health institution, what have you, that these teachings really need to be honored and respected. And I was just saying, like even with women on their moon time, like, you get your moon time, you're still expected to go and do certain things. And I'm like, well, we're on our moon time, like it's common sense that we would stay like in a place where we're not exerting ourselves so much, because we're mooning, right? And we're
Mhm.
going through purification, and we're weak, and we're tired, and so in a workplace sometimes that just does not fly. Like, no, you still gotta go work. You're gonna go get like, I'm
It's
sorry.
9 to 5, okay? Like you need to go.
And so you got to do all that teaching too, right? You're like, I have that like where I work, and women are on their moon time, and you're like, we got a big event, but they can't do anything with the medicines, and there's all kinds of stuff, so they can do other things. So we have to just adjust the schedule and that sort of thing. So these are things that I find that need to be incorporated to in institutions and different places that we work, so that our culture is being respected and honored as well. Our approach to our world is being respected. So that's been a big thing for me, teaching that over and over. It's like you go like 5 steps, and then all of a sudden we don't talk about it, and then they go back 5 steps again.
Wait a second.
It always feels like, okay, we went 1 or 2 steps, and then so we are gaining a little bit of movement, but I think the more we share these teachings, and the respect is there, and people are honoring us as Indigenous people of Turtle Island, I think they'll start understanding our way of life, and how we approach the environment, how we approach life. Yeah.
Yeah, I think you brought up a good topic, that one that I grapple with traditional medicines and being on my moon.
Mhm.
Um, because like I feel like sometimes when I'm on my moon, I'm like cursed. Like I feel cursed. Like I'm like, don't touch that. Don't go there. Don't walk over that thing. Don't do that thing. And I'm like, ah, like what's happening here? So I'm like, yeah, so I think about that. I'm like, really, am I out of commission for like 1 week out of every month? Because I totally understand the purification, and like
Yeah.
also historically people wouldn't be they would just get to like rest. Like they would just get to lay and rest,
Yeah.
and breathe
And
and
let
just like connect with their body. So
Right? And let people take care of you, because that's another thing too. I don't know about you, but I've always been like, I can give, 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 but when it's time to receive, I have a hard time receiving.
yeah, yeah.
And I think that it's really important that people learn how to receive too, because you know
Hmm.
what, you do a lot for people, and it's okay if they want to do stuff for you to help take care of you, whether if you're on your moon time or,
Hmm.
but it's not like you're cursed, so you're super powerful. And you're going through that purification process. And even like going out to the bush, not a good idea to be going out to the bush on your moon time. There's lots of common sense in there too. And
Hmm.
you're weak too. And if you're like you say, you burn lots of calories out there doing and harvesting and stuff.
Hmm.
And yeah, and I just think like with our like traditions, blood is a big thing. It's a
Hmm.
very sacred thing too. So I think like knowing that, like we're purifying, and we've got this ability to give life, and that's why we can't step over things either. And when we're out in the bush, we have to kind of watch where we're walking, watching where we're walking, seeing the medicines, and just being extra careful.
Yeah.
But on your moon time, especially, I think for safety reasons as well, is to
Hmm.
just stay put, take care of yourself, rest
Yeah.
up, because some people, their moon time doesn't last that long. But I
Hmm.
don't know about you guys, but mine lasted about 8 days.
Oh
It's
gosh.
like,
Same.
right?
Like this is a long time.
Right, and eat good, right? Like have your Monomin that's high, and like, all those vitamins that, you see on a cereal box is in
Hmm.
Monomin, and
Hmm.
iron is one of them, right? And
Yeah.
so yeah, so I think about all these medicines, and a lot of them are high in vitamin C, right? And they're antioxidants, and they're just so powerful. And I think about like all of our food. And one thing that I really would like to learn more of, those the edible, like, plants. Like I heard like, and I really would love to be able to, do that sort of, how when we say that this works, and then all of a sudden the scientists, they do their research and everything. Oh yes, the indigenous people are right. It does work, right? And then they start believing, and it's like, oh yeah, okay, they're right. It does really work. But our ancestors, our elders knew, like they know that all this way works, right? So it's funny how the only time they believe us is when it's scientifically proven.
Which is what aspirin is. I have a slide about that because it's red willow. So red
Yeah.
willow
Yeah.
contains the acetyl part of aspirin. So aspirin is the thing that prevents clots, right? That's why when people have heart attacks or stroke, people are like, take an aspirin every day. Or like, oh, you have chest pain, take an aspirin because you're trying to prevent a clot, because
Mhm.
clots in your body then like obstruct blood flow. So then you lose oxygen to parts of your heart. And that's why people, when they get heart attacks, like that's why it's
Mhm.
painful. But even just like so much of like, we're like, yeah, red willow does this. And then people were like, no, it doesn't. And then turned around and were like, yes, it does. Thank you so much for this information. And then made millions of dollars off of aspirin, right? Because
Right?
that's exactly what it does. Is like it's
Mhm.
the bark of the willow tree. It slows blood clotting. And so it increases your risk of bleeding, right? But for times when you're like, oh, I really want to make sure I don't have a clot, like the salicin is the thing that actually creates that. So like it's either we're like, oh, that's not real, that's not good, and then, or like, thank you so much for that information. Here's how I made money off of it, and that's a hard part of traditional medicine too, and why I think some people feel secretive about it because of like how exploited it is. Like it's either like you're like you just know winning, like you're just like, oh no, that's not real, that's alternative, like that's not actually, and versus like, oh, thank you, yeah, now I have this information, now I'm gonna sell it and do stuff. And I just like think that's not our culture. It's like to be reciprocal. So to like sell things like in a big way like this, like how aspirin did, like they specifically got this knowledge from indigenous people and then made this medication, without really crediting where it came from and this information. So I feel like, yeah, that's really really like what you're saying.
Um, when we do like our people, because of colonization, everything, our people have been really like not trusting the process. We don't want to share too much because of the hot spotting that they're doing, right? Like as soon as they find out something works, and next thing you know, we won't have any Labrador tea left, or we
Yeah.
won't have any, inner bark of poplar or inner bark of
Mhm.
willow. It'll be all extracted. And that's one thing I find, like to me, it's like being careful what we share, being careful of, like there's some things I won't even say because I don't want them to be taken advantage of and totally, harvested, and there's not much left. So
Exactly.
that's one thing. Yeah.
Yeah, so it's like you're wanting to like have our people have access to it. We don't want the shame of it anymore. And then also like keeping it so that it's not exploited either. Like it's just such a hard balance.
It is.
Um,
And and I think about like being a general practitioner, like every family pre-contact, we're all general practitioners. We could help heal our family with certain, broken limbs, cuts, sore stomach, rashes, what have you. We knew what to harvest. We knew how to take care of our people. And then when spirit was sick, then that's when we, access spirit, spiritual medicine people, to help us with that. Those that are gifted to be able to help us with our spirit, right? So I always think about like, and then I think about history too, pre-contact and like way down South America and all the things that they were already doing, like as opposed to what we were doing up here. I'm like, oh my gosh, like how advanced they were.
yeah.
And I think about like, like with you being a practitioner and everything and being a doctor, I just think that like, you know, even the anatomy of a plant, the anatomy of an animal, like we know what that looks like, pre-contact. And even today, like if you're a trapper, hunter, harvester, fisher person, the inside of that being. So you can kind of see how all the structure looks, the nervous system, everything, the lungs, how it looks like a tree, like what plants help us in different areas of our body. And every part of our body to all different nations throughout Turtle Island have a sort of analogy of, like the structure of our body and what it brings. Like knees represent humility. Like it's just like the more you start thinking about this, it's like, yeah, we have so many teachings that comes into play and how we can really take better care of ourselves.
Exactly. And I was just as you were saying that, I was like, it reminded me of colt's foot because colt's foot is a lung medicine. And then when you have the picture of the anatomy side by side, the way the lung looks, that's exactly the way colt's foot looks. Because like there's like the right the trachea and then the bronchioles, which is what this like what these little lines here are on this plant too. And this colt's foot is like it contains mucilage, which is just like a medical word for like helping bring things phlegm up, like because it forms like a layer over your like your throat and your mouth. So then it reduces your urge to cough, but then when you are able to, like, it kind of like helps bring up like the sickness, and it's like shaped exactly like a lung. And I noticed that's like a thing that yeah, like I'm like the medicine, like the shape of it and how it looks, or if it's a tree, most barks are good for lung things, and like that makes sense because trees like purify the air, right? And I just think of like, yeah, because colt's foot, which is in our region, we have a lot of it. It's like deep green. It's like smooth on the upper side, and then the bottom side is like white and like really like velvety, like soft kind of. And then the stems, they have the waxy part, and you can easily break it off by like hand, like as you're saying, not to like if you can to not use scissors, you can easily break that off. But just yeah, like it's like really amazing how much this looks like a lung. Like these are the bronchioles, and then these are like the things coming off of it, and then this is like where air comes from, and then it comes out. Like it looks exactly like a lung. And colt's foot, that's kind of what it's used for. Like people use it for like asthma or pneumonias or whooping cough, or like they'll make it like it's often in like teas I sometimes see. But like yeah, it relieves congestion, so it helps your lung things, like lung issues. So I think like yeah, there's so much to learn from even just the shape of medicines and where they're located. Like you can almost tell what a medicine is going to be for based off of how it looks.
And we have so much to talk about, eh? Like, and it's one plant at a time. Like, and
Mhm.
it's interesting because I just had my like I took in a relative, right? Because her mom passed away and she really didn't have anybody. And I said, now you're gonna be like, I thought I was her older sister, but I said I'm your auntie. And so I was telling her I was having a hard time sleeping and stuff, eh? And she came and helped us do some canoe building in that here. And she goes, it's interesting, Audrey, because you say you have trouble sleeping and you have hot plants like growing all over the sides of your house here. And she said
Oh,
the seeds of that, because it's a non-indigenous plant, right? But she said the seeds on the inside, you make a tea. She said that'll help you sleep at night. And she goes, isn't that interesting? The medicines that you need are usually growing right in front
right
of you.
beside you.
And it's so true. I've seen that happen so many times. And like I don't know a lot about non-indigenous plants, but I do know
Mhm.
that they are non-indigenous, right? I know a lot about indigenous plants that we do have here. And
Mhm.
so sometimes, like you talk about the mucilage from this plant, and
Mhm.
I know there's like about five other plants that you can mix together that you smoke that purges your lungs. Like mullein is a non-indigenous plant, but that mixed in with this, with mint, with willow, and
Mhm.
there's some other a couple of other ingredients into that tea, not tea, but the mixture to smoke.
Mhm.
And I don't know if you've seen that before too. I was like, why are they smoking if they got lung problems,
And
right?
then
But it's purging it, right? So they're
yeah.
smoking this medicine, but you're inhaling and then it purges it out. And I'm like, so there's so many different ways of help healing yourself, right? And even when you burn sage, like people start coughing right away. I say,
Mhm.
what, that medicine's doing its work because it's cleaning your lungs right now, but they think they're allergic or something, right?
Yeah.
But they don't realize it's like purging that stuff out of there. So
Yeah, yeah, yeah. I'm
anyway,
allergic. I'm like, no, that means you really need to breathe it in.
breathe
You
it in.
really need this.
Even like skunk, right? My mom, every time we're driving by and you can smell the skunk, she go, okay, everybody breathe.
Breathe.
She'd say, breathe through your nose, breathe it in. It's good for your, good for your lungs, she would say. And I'm like, oh my
Mhm.
gosh, we'd be like, no, we can't breathe. Right? But
No.
now I find myself every time I smell a skunk, I'm breathing it in. I'm like
Yeah.
through the nose and out through the mouth, right? And it is good medicine. It helps open up the airways and everything.
Hmm. That's so awesome. Yeah, you're like, no, I want to smell this. You're like, you're gonna do it. And I think of, yeah, like kind of what you were talking about in terms of like mixing, like, because some things like are kind of meant to be like they're grouped together, so it makes sense to mix them. And if you're taught like a certain like, oh, these medicines together, right? Like versus like what you were saying, like try not to experiment with mixing things if you don't know. But if you're taught like mullein, colt's foot, red wilt, like those things go together and you can smoke those things. One thing that I've learned is that like grandfather root, which is like cow's parsnip, um, it's like a conductor. So sometimes people like you're like, well, what if the medicines like work against each other? And I just remember my teacher saying like, well, if you have grandfather root, it conducts and it tells all the medicines where to go and what to do. So like when people sometimes ask like, oh, is this medicine going to interact with the medications I take? The back of my head, I'm like kind of looking at the list, but I'm like, well, the grandfather root, like that's its job is to tell things where to go. And if like people who are like knowledge and know this and they say put those things together, but you're like, well, chemically, if I put grandfather root with like, this thing, like they do the opposite thing. So why would I put those things together? And so this is a way I've seen people like kind of work around that in terms of like mixing things safely and making things like work together is one, maybe they're already grouped, they're already like a bunch of bark or they're a bunch of lung medicine, but like the grandfather root, like helping to like kind of pull everything together. And it says like, okay, you need to go here, you need to go to the lung, you need to go to the bladder. And I like kind of like, yeah, just think of like a little like person standing there being like, okay, go over there, go over there. And I just, yeah, like sometimes that can like medicines can help bridge other medicines together, like can help each other.
Like that medicine is very powerful, that grandfather root, eh?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. And I just, all the things that we learn from the different medicines that we see growing around, like this cow parsnip, a lot of people think it's hogsweed, right? Like,
Yeah.
and I'm like, it's not hogsweed though. Like, are people really like, I know historically, and I haven't tried, and these are things that I want to try, right? Because
Mm-hmm.
I've done a lot of research on the on this cow parsnip.
Mm-hmm.
And our people used to take, and this is just from documentation, and I think about, oh, I wonder if that's really true. I'd really like to find out for sure that we used to take the life of that plant and the root systems and that were used for one thing, but then the stems were also laid to rest on the earth for a little bit, and then we would take all the foliage off of it and use the stems
Mm-hmm.
and it's like steam it, right? But we put food inside like wild rice and meats and stuff, and we'd stuff it, and then we would cook it. And it's supposed to be super good. And so, but I've never tried it, and I'd like to find somebody who does that sort of like bush food cuisine, right? To
Oh,
find out to really feel comfortable.
yeah.
And even the seeds they say too, right? So, and I've never tried it. So, and that's one thing I always think like, wouldn't it be cool to do this whole like investigation? Like, even with
Mm.
the inner bark of white pine, we used to make that into a flour and make flatbreads with it, right? Like, so, and I was
Oh,
thinking, man, like those are things that I'd really love to find out more about and work along somebody else that's already done it so that they could show us step by step how to access this plant and turn it into an edible food source, right?
mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. Um, that's so cool. I'm like, I want to be able to do that. I just where I'm like, oh, in the bush. I'm like, all right, combine these. And like, I just think that's so cool. I'm like, I want to do that. Yeah. So yeah, grandfather root being a really, really powerful medicine, and like, it kind of smells like celery. And it has flowers on the top. But you're right. Sometimes like the version, like lots of people be like, oh, that's hogsweed, but it's actually it looks similar, but it's actually different. Like hogsweed grows a lot taller. And yeah, it causes like the chemical burn, like people touch it and then they go in the sun, and then that's when you get those like chemical blisters and stuff. But
Oh,
like,
and they can just start off like a little tiny, like a little
mhm,
blister, and then with like being out in the sun, it just makes it spread, and it's just this horrible situation. It's kind of like poison ivy in some
yeah,
ways too, the reaction
yeah.
to the skin. But I haven't seen cow hogweed around here, so I don't know. I don't know if it's
Mm.
come into our territory now. I'm not sure.
I
Hmm.
not haven't seen it in Thunder Bay, but when I was like at home in Whitefish Bay, I did see like a really big one, and we actually just called the health unit to be
Yeah.
like, this is really too close to the road, like kids are gonna touch
Yeah.
this. Um,
Yeah.
but like, yeah, I think the difference is, yeah, like just like how the stems, like it just that this is like quite a bit smaller, like the little
Mhm.
flowers at the top compared to like hogsweed, and it's like more condensed, right? Like here
Yeah.
it's kind of spread out nicely and it's in groups, whereas this is like each one has like five or six. So, but there are lookalikes, so it's good to know
Mhm.
like, hey, like what, make sure, especially if you like drink this, like, can you imagine it? Oh, I don't even
Right.
want to think
Yeah.
about it.
And that's what I mean, like the duality in plant world, right? You really need to know your plants
Mhm.
before you ingest anything or even taste anything.
Yeah,
You have to know 100% that that is what that plant is. Do not eat or ingest
yeah,
until you totally identify it, because yeah, it could be, really detrimental,
exactly.
fatal in some cases, eh?
Hmm.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Mm.
I was thinking about some of the stuff. I have a slide here about this. Some of the stuff that you were talking about, because there are certain things that like
Mhm.
as a like I have things that I feel comfortable like talking to people about, like in a clinical setting.
Mm.
Because, I try and one, it's helpful to know because then when people tell me they're taking something, like I'll just be able to know. Like sometimes, like for example, like one of my colleagues was like, "Oh, this person's taking this traditional medicine that they got from the medicine person, but they got a rash. But we started this other cream at the same time. So like, can you like look at the ingredients and like, do you think that's like this traditional medicine caused it?" And then I was like looking, I'm like calendula, like all these things that are way super gentle, and I was like, "There's no way that this caused the reaction. Like, it's probably the other cream based off of like." Knowing what the ingredients are and what they're kind of doing and like how powerful a medicine is. So I find that that's sometimes a helpful skill in like a clinical setting where I'm able to like offer like, no, I don't think that that was that. And sure enough, like it was, I was like, tell the person to just do one or the other. And sure enough, it was like the other cream. And I was like, it just doesn't make sense. Like there's too much gentle things in there. But I definitely like there are things that I feel like, yeah, comfortable suggesting. So blueberry is one of them because it's just like a well known and it's like really easy to identify, right? Blueberries look like the same. And like another one is because I see a lot of people with substance use disorder is licorice root. I didn't really know this, but I get a lot of like my family to do this because licorice root, when you chew on it, like when you have the urge to like drink or smoke up or do drugs, and you like kind of like, so you like you were saying, you need the inherent belief that like you can do that and like believe in yourself to do that, and like also not to be like helpless, like, oh, nothing can help, like, you like, no, you can help yourself, you really can. And like traditional medicines can be one part of that. It's the licorice because it has like the isoliquiteriginin, which is the friggin' long name of being like it blocks the nervous system from producing dopamine. Because that's why drugs are addictive, right? You drink or you do a drug, it's the dopamine that it releases, and then your body's like, ooh, we love when dopamine is released. So what this medicine does, licorice root, it actually has a chemical ingredient that tells your nervous system, hey, when this person drinks, don't release any dopamine. So then you kind of do it and you're like, oh, like this doesn't, and it kind of breaks the habit in the sense of like it doesn't feel as good, so then you don't really want to do it. But that's like one thing where I felt comfortable like suggesting to people like, hey, if you like, and licorice, it tastes actually like licorice. Like it's quite easy to identify and quite benign, but that's one of the things I've learned for like substance use, because otherwise the options we have for substance use aren't really that great. Like in terms of treatment, like there's not really like a lot that's available. So this is like a natural way that people can like help themselves when they have cravings, is like chewing on licorice root. Or even if you didn't have licorice root, licorice candy, like just anything that has that licorice, it's that specific, yeah, like um, ingredient that helps with that. Have you heard of like any other things that people use like for substance use disorders or like when they're struggling with addiction, like things like ceremonies or plants or like things to utilize to like help them? Because there's kind of like this is one thing I know, but I'm just curious like if there's anything you know.
I know, like, and you're probably all aware of bear root, right?
Mm-hmm.
Bear root is another one where we light it and we breathe it in. We ask that medicine to help us to clear our minds and
Mm-hmm.
to, like, to push away like addiction and things like that. So I found when people are struggling and they want to use but they really don't want to, they're they just pretty much don't want to do, but sometimes those cravings come. And so I've always been told to light up a little bit of the bear root
Mm-hmm.
and just breathe it in through your nose and out through the mouth and ask it to help you to, like, sort of calm down those cravings. And that,
Yeah.
and sort of like doing like an opposite, like an affirmation that, no, I'm changing my life, and talking to the medicine and turning it around. And I always think about, like, every time when I think about when I quit, I had bear root. I
Mm-hmm.
had like black diamond willow fungus, which helped open up, like it felt like there's a vice on my head when I first, like, like I felt really stuck in my head. And that's what happens when you have addictions or you have depression or you have um you know mental illness, right? Where you don't feel well, you don't feel like you're doing very good. And I remember going to the sweat lodge and this elder had this white fungus stuff. And he's like, what I'm going to get you to do is when you go home today, you're going to take some of this medicine, he said, and you're going to breathe it in, and put it on a pin or something, and you're going to light it up. And it's got to be the size of your thumbnail, like, and he says,
Mm-hmm.
it's going to burn, like, when you're breathing, and it kind of burns, right? I'm like, oh my gosh, this is burning, right? But I do it, and I'm telling you, everything was watering. My eyes were watering, my nose, everything. But when I was done, I felt good. I felt clear. I felt like, because it opens up the capillaries inside too, and it clears everything up.
Mm-hmm.
And so I felt like it wasn't like you don't get high. It's opening you up and it's making you feel better. And so I felt like I could even see better. I felt better in that medicine because it's like that belief again. I was saying to the black diamond willow fungus, please help me because I'm really struggling. I feel like, because we come from that whole thing, like, you're not a good person. All those sort of horrible things that people told you when you were young.
Mm-hmm.
And you kind of believed in all that stuff. So it's undoing of all that mental anguish that you were put through and to made you feel not like you're a worthy human being, but really you are. You're a good human being. And so undoing all that through the medicine. So those are the types, and water as another thing. Like I've always been told to sit with the water and ask the water to help you, to go sit in the water, have a bath, cry in the water, you know? Those are, like, it seems so simple, right? Like, but it
That's
worked. It
good.
works for me. It works for a lot of people.
Yeah.
And there's other medicines, but I can't really talk to that right now.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, there are other medicines too. And all I can say is if you're hurting out there and you're struggling with addictions, mental health, depression, those are, you'll find your way through ceremony because, we could talk about this, but when you go to ceremony, darkroom ceremony, sweat lodge,
Mm-hmm.
could even be like in a healing circle, right? Where something's suggested to you
Yeah.
and that'll be good medicine for you,
Mm-hmm.
and it's all about if you believe again too, right? And you trust in the process.
Mm-hmm.
That's a big one, right? So there are a lot of medicines out there. Like I said too, I just learned about the stems of sage, right? That help with anxiety because anxiety and panic attacks goes hand in hand with addictions as well and trauma.
Mm-hmm.
And that there makes a really good tea. You don't need a lot of it, like just enough, like, and just think of a teaspoon, like, when you have a tea bag,
Yeah.
just think of that. That's all you think, like a tablespoon of medicine, right? So a stem, a couple of these stems would be perfect, you
Yeah.
know, for a cup of tea. You just break it all up because that's where the medicine is. And just cedar too. Like a lot of people take all the green pieces off of the cedar.
Yeah.
But actually, my son, he goes, Mom, the medicine's all in the stem too, right? And I said, Yeah. Oh, I'm so happy you know that. I said to my son, I said, Oh, I'm so happy. So you just break up your medicine, you know. Some people put it in, like, tie it up in this little butcher cord that you could get
Oh, okay.
and
Yeah, yeah.
tie it, and you can steep it in your tea. I just put it in there and you can strain it, right? Put it in your boiling water. Like I said, put the lid on
Uh-huh.
and have your little enough to have a nice cup of tea. And that'll help you with your anxiety, your even fear. Like, a lot of people have so much fear, which turns into anxiety and panic attacks,
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
you know. Stems of sage, grief, panic, anxiety.
Yeah.
And this one here, say this cedar has saved my life so many times when I was hurting, and I would even just have some, even the smell of it, like I would crush it up, I'd have it in a bag and I'd crush it up and
Mhm.
that deep breathing and just thank that, ask and thanking the cedar for helping me throughout that night to get me through to the next morning. And so, cedar, whether it's in a tea or it's just in its natural form,
Mhm.
and this is protection. This really helps, and it's high in vitamin C. All these medicines that we have are really high in vitamin C, which is good for your body and
Mhm.
other things too.
Yeah.
So, yeah, there's lots to talk about. You can only take so much in at a time. So just kind of like, and you'll know the things when we're having discussions like this and talking,
Mhm.
because somebody will say something and you'll take it right in, and
Like,
you'll
oh
never
yes.
forget it because it goes straight to your heart, eh? And you'll
Mhm.
always remember it. And then you'll go off somewhere and think about it, and then you've missed a lot of other information, but it's okay because you're taking what you need from this and you'll carry it forward. Yeah.
Exactly. I'll pause this because we just had, I think, one question. It was related to a slide that I showed earlier. It was like about antidepressants potentially reacting with traditional medicines, and if I could expand on that. So this is the part where I was saying that like the grandfather route I find is like really important in terms of like being able to like help deal with I'm just gonna pull this up, help deal with like interactions, like that's I think medicines can work synergistically. But that's a really good point about like certain tradition like medicines, like plant medicines that interact with antidepressants, because I feel like in terms of interactions, those are like the most like the potential, like, taking something like that has the most potential for like interactions to occur. um so if a medicine person tells you like, oh no, you can have those things together, I'm inclined to believe that. And I do think that there are certain interactions like that have been studied that like might be helpful to know, especially if you do a lot of plant medicines for mental health. And that's golden seal and St. John's wort. So beautiful, amazing medicines. I find that if you're taking an antidepressant with it, one, it can either reduce like how well that antidepressant is working, like the Western medicine, or it'll make so much of it that it becomes toxic and too much, and then you like overdose on it. So those are ones where I have a hard time, like when people say like, oh, maybe they're on like venlafaxine, which is like an antidepressant, but they, go to like a natural food store, or, they're given St. John's wort, like it's going to amplify that particular medicine like tenfold, which can then be harmful. So those are like a couple of the ones where like, not I say like, oh, you can't take Western medicine and traditional, but just to be cautious, especially around those two, because like ones where I've like seen people come to the emergency department because they had, you know, had kind of a combination of some stuff. These are two of them where it's just like be a bit more cautious when like, you know, a mental health tea you have has golden seal or St. John's wort, because those are things people use for depression and anxiety, but it's just like either, yeah, can make a toxic metabolite or it can reduce the effectiveness of the medication or overdo it. So just like to, and there are lots of resources available in terms of like people do like lots of herbal dietary supplements like outside of traditional medicine, you know, just like even at health food stores. So I just say like, just check what the ingredients are, especially if you're just kind of going out and trying to get those things yourself. And it's not like a knowledge keeper told you, hey, you can take this. Like if you're just kind of like, oh, I'm going to try this thing and see if it helps. It's like, just take a look and make sure for these two ingredients that you're like checking the interaction, because it can be pretty bad. So, but outside of that, you know, it's usually like the grandfather root, like that I think helps bring things together, and then belief and prayer that like all of the medicines are going to work together. Like sometimes when I'm like, I feel like, because I'm on antidepressants. So when I take them and I was like, oh, I have all these side effects. Like I hate this. I don't like this. And so I remember just like going to someone and they were just like, well, just pray that you don't have those things. I was like, what? And I did, and it worked. Like it was just like, please, Creator, like help this medicine like work with my body, because it's not. I'm having these side effects. I really want this to work. Like, please help. Like take these like side effects away so I can just naturally absorb this medication because I know it's going to help me. And then it did. So like energetically, you can connect to like certain medicines, like just and have belief that they're gonna work. And if you have side effects, asking, hey, like this is like there's something interacting with my body. Like what can I do differently? Like you know, you can pray for that and ask for that too, like that you don't have as many side effects from medicines. Which hilarious concept to explain to Western healthcare providers. I'm like, always. They're like, what do you mean pray away the side effects? I said, yeah, it's a real thing. You just ask, like, I don't want these side effects, and then you don't have them.
So
Yeah.
true, because you don't really see people like if I have a like because my sister goes, Audrey, don't suffer so much now. Have a like take an Advil or so now I do because I do suffer right with certain different things, and so I'll go Advil to the Advil. Like, please help me not have pain tonight. Like a
Mhm.
lot of people don't pray to their medicine. It comes still from the earth, right? Like, and so it's really important, even though it's Western, it's important to give thanks to that medicine, asking it to please help you, like because I really believe in that. And so yeah, so you're that's like mixing our traditional beliefs in with the Western world.
Yeah. Just pray away your side effects. What? Like, oh, never mind. I'll just, yeah. Native people get it. But, like, outside of that, like, oh, trying to explain some of these things is like, yeah, it's just not widely accepted in Western medicine. Yeah, so I mean, we've talked about a lot. We've talked about like the protocols that like you can do for harvesting. We talked about the cedar tea. We learned about like something that I like put back in the bush and like kind of like discard in terms of like the sage stems, like in making tea out of that. I just feel like I learned that, and then I'm like, I have some at home that I was gonna go put in the bush, but I'll do that. And taking medicines, yeah, when you need them versus kind of like hoarding and like taking them before you actually need them. Like I think sometimes people who are traditional medicine providers, like that's all they do. Sometimes they have stores of stuff, but their stores are going so quickly. That's why. So, they don't have time necessarily to like go and harvest. Like, so some people have like, things available, or like they generally know what's going to happen, but like, yeah, really taking only what you need. We've talked about like how nutrition and like our traditional foods are a part of, like that's also a part of like traditional like healing, like traditional healing, and praying to your water, and drinking water. I know that like talking to your water is a real thing. Like they've done studies where like someone was like singing to a thing of water and they looked under the microscope, and then someone was like calling the water down and they looked under the microscope, and then the pattern of how
that water looked when you were like singing and saying really nice things to it. It was like it would like had a really beautiful cylindrical pattern versus when you were being like saying mean things. You're like, well, it's just water, but it wasn't because it absorbs whatever you pray or think into it or say to it. So I just think your words have so much power and your mind has so much power. We talked about that in terms of mind over matter, and like a lot of traditional medicine and Western medicine is about belief, and it's important to believe that your medicines are going to work. Or if you don't want to take them, then that's okay. Just like, make that distinction of like, oh, I'm not sure, like, really trying to commit, like when you want something to work, and like actually pray for that so that you attract that energy. We talked about how medicines on the land often look or can look like the thing that they're going to treat, like the trees and the colt's foot and things like just like things like that. Yes, I feel like we discussed a lot. This was a lot.
And there's just one more thing I just want to add
Yeah.
is when you receive medicine
Mhm.
and you like I've been in the situation where somebody gifted me some medicine, and then I ended up making the medicine for a large group of people. And my nervous system, because I've got like Indigenous people have really sensitive nervous systems, right? That I was drinking this mint tea, and then it just crossed my mind, and it really like kind of like I was freaking out thinking, I didn't pick this medicine. Was that really the medicine? So there was that part of it too, like because you really need to examine your medicine. Like it smelled like mint, it looked like mint, but I kind of like went, oh my gosh, that's a big learning curve for me. Like I would really need to make sure from now on, if I share tea, my safest thing would probably be cedar tea.
Yeah. Yeah.
Because I know for sure. Or like even like blueberry leaves, right? Because there's another plant that grows right next door to it. It's highly poisonous.
Mhm.
And it's an invasive species. But what I do and what I've been told is that when you're harvesting your blueberry leaves and branches for diabetes, for instance, make sure there's blueberries that are fully ripe on it. Okay.
Mhm.
And save some like and harvest those and still have the berries on them and dry the berries with it.
Mhm.
It's just so powerful. And even like when you're harvesting medicines, like you gotta like I see a lot of people, they'll harvest medicine, they'll put it right in the sun. I'm like, oh, like you gotta hang it somewhere where it's gonna retain its nice green looking, right? The blue, whatever. Hang it somewhere, like upside down, let all the medicine juice, like all the liquid that's in the plant to go into the leaves and the branches and let it dry out in there, right? Yeah, so it's interesting, like when I see people when they're harvesting and then how they're drying things, I'm like, okay, that's interesting, right? So there's a whole part of the storage part too, like the drying and the storing that you have to learn too. It's not just like going out to harvest, you have and when and how and what do I do after when I get the medicine home? How do I dry it? Where do I put it? Especially if you have animals too, cats especially.
Yeah. There's so many plants
Yeah,
that
it's like you have to have your own little area, your medicine chest somewhere so that it's undisturbed, right? So, but anyway, I just went off a little bit there, but I just wanted to just touch base on that. Just make sure you know your medicine. Make sure you know it's a really reliable source that you got your medicine from. If you're leery or and your spirit's saying, your intuition saying, oh, I don't know, then you know it's better off not to ingest it if you're not sure.
Yeah.
Yeah.
You can always just put it back on the land, right? Like, oh,
That's right. Yeah.
thank
Yeah.
you for being here, but I'm gonna just decline, and then there's so many times where I'm like, okay, like I'm like I don't know what to do with this. Like, don't throw it away. Just go put it back on the land and say thank you, and
Yeah.
like
Yeah.
and just leave it. Yeah.
That's right. Yeah. It's not like you're being disrespectful. It's just you're not sure. Yeah.
Yeah.
It's not the time.
Exactly. Awesome.
It was a great time. Thank you for inviting me.
Thank you for coming and doing this. I just think, so it's I'm like, we've been talking for like 2 hours. We didn't take
There's
a
so
break.
much more to talk about. Like it's
I
like
like
you say something
forgot.
like, "Oh yeah, I gotta chime in because or else I'll forget about." And then but something else always comes up right we
I
can
know.
talk about.
Like we can talk for hours. We're like, what about this and this? And I'm just like, there's so many things. I'm like, oh, let's talk about that. Like, it's just this was a really beautiful.
All right.
Yeah, so I want to thank everyone for tuning in with us and joining. And so the survey link it's available on Facebook and YouTube and Twitch. Those and also for questions, there might have been a bit of confusion, but for Zoom, we are switching our platform, so there won't be the ability to ask questions on Zoom. It'll be through like those other like we're live streaming, but we are monitoring those things. But there is a survey that's involved. We really appreciate your feedback. It's like really it helps. Well, one, it helps us decide what I'm going to talk about, and two, it helps us improve these things because we want it to be beneficial to you. So if it's not, then I'm like, oh, I need to know. So any type of survey, I think it's very quick, and there's going to be a link that's sent out that you can click on. And I think what we do is that when people fill out a survey, we just randomize. If you leave your name, we randomize, and then we send like a small gift to someone that wins a little prize for helping us give that feedback. But outside of that, Chimigwech, Audrey, thank you so much for this conversation. I'm like, I learned so much from you. Like this was like a talk, and I'm like,